Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook, Planting the Immortality Tree in the Wizarding World. Chapter 81. As Ronan thought, the common sense of foundation building is not secret. So this book can only be sold for one low-grade spirit stone at most. One low-grade spirit stone is the lowest price among the secret books of cultivation. Ronan immediately gave the stall owner one low-grade spirit stone. Then, the stall owner took out an old book from the bag behind him and handed it to Ronan. Ronan took it and saw the words, Foundation Building Theory, written on the cover of the book. The book is not thick, only about 40 pages. Opening the first page, you will know that the whole book is a cultivator's opinion on foundation building. This cultivator called himself, Empty Illusion Taoist, in the book and said that he had reached the peak of chi refining. The author of the book, Empty Illusion Taoist, first talked about the age level of cultivation. He said in it that it is best to build the foundation before the age of 80. Although, cultivators who have reached the peak of chi refining can generally live about 120 years. But according to his inquiries and his observations over the years, the success rate of cultivators who build their foundation before the age of 80 is much higher than those who build their foundation after the age of 80. The author also said in the book that although there are cultivators who build their foundation after the age of 80, they are very few. Building a foundation requires a lot of resources. Some cultivators over the age of 80 fight for resources in order to build their foundation, but die early and do not live to the lifespan of 120 years at the peak of chi refining. The author advised in the book that if you have not built your foundation after the age of 80, don't worry about it. It is better to use the last few decades to become a national teacher in the secular dynasty and enjoy yourself. Enjoying for decades is not in vain for decades of hard work in the fairyland. After all, as long as you reach the middle stage of chi refining, you can almost dominate the secular world. With such strength, you can live in a high-rise building in the secular world. Why live in a shanty in the shanty area, or an ordinary mansion in the mansion area? Taoist Kongwan chattered about his views on the age level of foundation building. I don't know if this person hasn't built a foundation after he turned 80, and thus wasted decades of time on cultivation. After the foundation building age barrier, Taoist Kongwan began to talk about the three major barriers of foundation building. The first barrier is the physical barrier. The first prerequisite for a person who builds a foundation is a strong physique and sufficient blood and qi in the body. Muscles, bones, internal organs, etc. must not have hidden injuries when building a foundation. If the blood and qi are insufficient, or the physique is not strong, or there are hidden injuries, the foundation will fail at the time of building a foundation. The second barrier is the mana barrier. Only when the mana exceeds a certain limit can the foundation be successfully built. The third barrier is the spiritual barrier. The spirit of the cultivator must also reach a certain level, so that when building a foundation, he can maintain himself in the illusion of delusion, and command the blood and mana of the whole body to complete the foundation together. Taoist Kongwan said in the book that in today's world of immortal cultivation, the methods of reaching the mana barrier and the spiritual barrier are not very difficult. As long as you continue to practice some chi refining techniques, if you have a decent talent for cultivation, you can reach the magic power and spiritual barriers. As for the physical barrier, it is more difficult for today's cultivators to reach it. It is said that when the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was still abundant in the world of cultivation, the resources between heaven and earth were abundant. At that time, when cultivators were practicing techniques, they would refine the rare treasures between heaven and earth into medicine. While practicing, they took medicine. When practicing, they refined the medicine power and acted on their own bodies, thus completing the enhancement of physique and blood. Unfortunately, nowadays, there are too few resources in heaven and earth, and most of them are in the hands of the sect. As a result, it is extremely difficult for these casual cultivators to reach the blood barrier. Taoist Kongwan said in the book that now, if you want to reach the blood barrier, he knows of two ways. One is to find a way to get the blood medicine, take the medicine, and enhance the blood. But the blood medicine is not easy to get, and this method requires taking a lot of blood medicine. The second is to practice the body cultivation method. However, the time for these cultivators to practice qigong every day is not enough, and practicing physical cultivation will slow down their progress. In the book, Taoist Kongwan also said that even if the three levels of physique, mana, and consciousness are all up to standard, it is not necessarily possible to successfully build a foundation. To increase the probability of successful foundation building, one is to continuously strengthen the physique, mana, and consciousness, and the other is to take a pill that can increase the probability of foundation building, the foundation building pill. After taking the foundation building pill, when building the foundation, the body's chi, blood, mana, and spirit will be improved in a short time, and cooperate with each other, thereby greatly increasing the probability of successful foundation building for the cultivator. However, it is extremely difficult to obtain the foundation building pill. First of all, the recipe of the foundation building pill is firmly controlled by the immortal family and the sect. Secondly, the medicinal materials for refining the foundation building pill are also extremely difficult to obtain. These medicinal materials are almost all planted on the spiritual veins of the sect. Finally, even if an ordinary casual cultivator spent a lot of effort and used great means to obtain the recipe of the foundation building pill and the medicinal materials for refining the pill, he still faced the problem of difficulty in refining the pill. The steps of refining the foundation building pill are complicated, and the control of furnace temperature and time is extremely high. Therefore, the success rate of refining the foundation building pill is also extremely low. Perhaps, a casual cultivator, who has worked hard to obtain the pill recipe and medicinal materials, refines it himself, or asks an alchemist to refine it. Once he fails, these efforts will be wasted. Taoist Kongwan also said that the acquisition of the foundation building pill sometimes depends on chance. Sects and immortal families have foundation building pills. When the sect and the immortal cultivator family fall, the foundation establishment pill will flow out. If a monk at the peak of chi refining has the opportunity, he may be able to get it. Ronan stood in front of the stall and finished flipping through the books on the spot. After seeing that the book was indeed true, he turned around and left. While walking, I was thinking about building the foundation. He practiced the ancient wood immortality technique, and although his strength increased, it was not increased by much, but his spirit and magic power increased much. And if you want to succeed in building the foundation, you must increase your strength to break through the physical barrier. In his mind, he immediately thought of several ways to improve the physical strength. The knight's breathing technique, bloodline transformation technique, energy particle amplification, etc. in the wizarding world can all transform the physical body. However, the knight's breathing technique should not be effective quickly, as it is similar to the internal power in the secular world of cultivating immortals. Otherwise, those knights in the kingdom of the land who practice the night breathing technique will not accept bloodline transformation and energy particle quenching in the future. The bloodline transformation technique can't help but have risks, and it may also change a person's character. This is not within his scope of consideration. As for the increase in energy particles, he learned from the books in the library that if the wizard apprentice increases energy particles, it may cause harm to his body. The key to building the physical foundation is that there should be no hidden wounds in the body. If he uses energy particles to amplify himself, even though he has strengthened his body, it will be in vain if it leaves behind hidden injuries. But, I have healing skills and light recovery, maybe I can cure dark wounds. Ronan thought for a while and then made a decision. He must first try to find physical cultivation methods, chi and blood elixirs, and foundation building pills. At the same time, try to see if it is feasible to increase energy particles. He didn't see the body cultivation method, chi and blood medicine and foundation building pill in Fangxi. So, he walked towards the mansion area. Ronan paid the money and entered the east area of the mansion. Then, he walked towards the treasure building. Behind the treasure building is the Lin family, the #1 cultivating immortal family in the east area of the mansion. It is a place where cultivation items are bought and sold. Since the Lin family guarantees the items inside, they will basically not be fake. However, the price is not cheap either. After Ronan walked in, he was immediately greeted by a waiter. With a glance of Ronan's consciousness, he knew that this guy was at the 3rd level of chi refining. This level of cultivation is considered average in the shanty town. But in the mansion area, it's the ground floor. What does this guest need? Ronan immediately ignored him and went straight to the point. I wonder if Jubao Pavilion sells body cultivation methods, chi and blood medicine, or anything related to the foundation establishment pill. After hearing this, the guy wasn't surprised. It seemed that many monks had come to Treasure Collection Tower to ask about these things before. Please wait a moment, sir, I'm going to find the supervisor. After that, the waiter asked Ronan to sit down at a tea table and made Ronan spiritual tea. Then, he hurried upstairs to find his supervisor. Not long after, Ronan smelled a gust of fragrant wind. Turning around, he saw a graceful and beautiful woman walking down the stairs. Ronan's consciousness swept away and he knew that this woman was at the 8th level of Qi refining. This fellow Taoist, I am Shi, the deacon of the Lin family. The woman bowed to Ronan and sat down on the other side of the tea table. Her eyes were like autumn water, and her gaze fell on Ronan calmly. Just now, I heard from my buddy that fellow Taoists need something to build a foundation. Ronan nodded. Shi continued. Excuse me, I don't know what level of Qi refining your friend is at now. Ronan frowned slightly. This has nothing to do with you, you just want to talk about whether there is anything to build the foundation. There was no embarrassment on Shizai's face, she just smiled slightly. The Lin family is now recruiting powerful monks. I think Taoist looks young. If Taoist's age is similar to his appearance, he has already reached the 8th level of Qi refining. The Lin family welcomes fellow Taoists to join us. When the time comes, the Lin family will also arrange for the foundation building of fellow Taoists. The expression on Ronan's face did not change, and he just said, what do you mean by fellow Taoist? That is to say, after I join the Lin family can give me the Qi and blood medicine and foundation building pill. Shi smiled again. Fellow Taoist, I never said this. Besides, I am just a deacon in the Lin family. If you join the Lin family, I will not know how the Lin family will arrange for you, have no idea. The words I just said were just what the Lin family members ordered me to say. If fellow Taoist intends to join the Lin family, I can help you inform the Lin family. Ronan leaned slightly on the chair and said, we will consider joining in the future. Are there the 3 things I just mentioned here? Shi said, the great Qi and blood medicine and foundation building elixir materials or prescriptions are all quite precious, and the Lin family is unlikely to sell them. We do have a copy of the body cultivation method here. It was obtained by the Lin family when they followed the Wanjun sect and attacked the Changsheng sect. Can you show it to me? Ronan asked. Certainly. Shi clapped her white palms and made 2 snapping sounds. The clerk walked over from the counter in the front hall, lowered his head slightly, and waited for instructions. Shi said, bring the green lotus and white lotus root skill to this fellow Taoist. The guy said yes and went upstairs. Not long after, he took out a small wooden box made of sandalwood and handed it to Shi. Shi took it, pushed it with her hand, and opened the top panel of the small wooden box, revealing a book inside. The book is brand new and looks like a handwritten copy. Shi took out the book and offered it to Ronan respectfully with both hands. Ronan saw the 5 words, green lotus and white lotus root skill, written on the cover of the manuscript. Ronan flipped through it at first and realized that this secret book still only contained the contents of the first few pages. I thought that even in the best treasure house in the mansion area, I could only read the contents of the first few pages. Generally speaking, the first few pages of this kind of exercise book can only be an overview. How to practice and what training conditions are required will only be shown in the following content. In today's world of cultivating immortals with scarce resources, some conditions may not be met. Seeing Ronan's move, Shi also guessed what Ronan was thinking and said, fellow Taoist, the first few pages of this secret book say that after practicing this technique, you can not only strengthen your physical fitness, but also enhance your body's recovery power. If you practice it to a deep level, you can also repair hidden injuries. Ronan looked at the first few pages and found that the content was similar to what Shi had summarized, so he thought to himself, if it was such a powerful secret book, it was simply an excellent technique for passing the foundation building physical test, and the Lin family would be willing to take it out for sale. Although they can make a lot of money by selling the manuscripts, the Lin family keeps it to themselves and only trains it for their own clansmen to increase the probability of their clansmen building foundations and increase the family's strength, which is obviously more beneficial. When Ronan's thoughts were racing, Shi continued, of course, the training conditions for this secret book are also a bit harsh. Ronan looked at Shi. Shishi smiled slightly. The Lin family's business here is naturally different from the market in the shanty town. The good or bad of a secret book will be told to the customers. Whether the customer buys it or not depends entirely on the customer. What's so harsh about the training conditions? Ronan asked. Shishi said, to practice this technique, you have to practice it in a place with strong spiritual energy, and you have to swallow a tonic medicine while practicing. But, you know that in today's world of immortality, resources are scarce. Without the assistance of spiritual energy and external medicine, cultivation will be much slower. Members of the Lin family have tried to practice this technique. After practicing for 5 days, they only made slight progress. When you practice to the extent that you can heal hidden wounds, I'm afraid it will take nearly 100 years to practice. After hearing this, Ronan felt relieved. These cultivation conditions are indeed harsh for monks in the world of immortality. After all, the places with strong spiritual energy and the great medicines of heaven and earth are occupied by the sect. Only the sect can practice this body cultivation method. No, not everyone in the sect can practice this body cultivation method. Although the sect occupies the spiritual vein, not every monk can possess the eye of the spiritual spring on the spiritual vein. However, these conditions are extremely easy for him to achieve. Ronan pretended to think for a while and then asked, how many spiritual stones are needed? 3 middle-grade spiritual stones. Shi Xiying's lips slightly opened and she said. Ronan frowned, you just said that the training conditions of green lotus and white lotus root technique are harsh, and it is a handwritten copy. Are you selling it for 3 pieces of middle-grade spiritual stones? Shi smiled slightly and said, fellow Taoist, if you are as old as you are, under 20 years old, or just over 20 years old, this technique is very useful to you. When you reach the peak of your practice, it may be the time when you want to build a foundation. At that time, you can use this technique to heal your hidden injuries and allow you to reach the physical level in building a foundation. Our treasure house offers the price of 3 middle-grade spiritual stones, and we refuse to bargain. Ronan waved his hand, I only have 1 medium-grade spiritual stone on me. I can't afford these 3 medium-grade spiritual stones. Shi listened and was unmoved. Fellow Taoist, I have just said that we refuse to bargain for this secret book. If you don't have enough spirit stones, you can raise it. This secret book is a handwritten copy and will always be there. As long as fellow Taoists give you enough spiritual stones, we will give you the secret book. 2 middle-grade spiritual stones. Ronan said. Shi just smiled and did not bargain with Ronan. Ronan waited for a while and saw that Shi was still unmoved, so he stood up and said. Forget it, I don't have enough spiritual stones, so I won't buy them. With that said, he walked out of the treasure-gathering building. Ah Cheng, send this Taoist friend off. Shi said. The waiter who had entertained Ronan walked forward diligently and sent Ronan out. Ronan originally thought that if he left, Shi would relent and lower the price, but this person actually went out of his way to see off the guests. Ronan walked out of the treasure building and came to the crowded streets. The waiter said goodbye again and walked back. Ronan walked into the crowd, thinking to himself as he followed. The spiritual stones in his hand now are indeed not enough for 3 middle-grade spiritual stones, but only 1 medium-grade spiritual stone and about 60 low-grade spiritual stones. Green lotus and white lotus root gong can not only strengthen the body, but also enhance recovery and heal hidden injuries. If he practices the green lotus and white lotus art, and adds the 2 witchcrafts of healing and light recovery, and then uses energy particles to amplify himself, he will be much safer. Although, according to Shi, practicing the green lotus and white lotus art is enough to reach the physical level of the 3 levels of foundation building. However, theory of foundation building also mentions that even if the physical, magical and spiritual levels reach the 3 levels of foundation building, it is not necessarily a success in foundation building. Rather, the stronger the physical, magical and spiritual levels, the greater the success rate of foundation building. In order to increase the success rate of foundation building, he must try to improve these 3 items. In addition to practicing the green lotus and white lotus art, he still wants to use the energy particle amplification method to further improve his physical strength. Earn spirit stones. Ronan thought, if you buy and sell master-level talismans in the market, the speed of earning spirit stones will be too slow. Moreover, the Changsheng sect, which has been fighting with the Wanjun sect, has been destroyed by the Wanjun sect. Now is a peaceful time, and talismans cannot be sold at a high price. After thinking for a while, Ronan planned to use the transformation potion to change his appearance, and then sell the master level first grade top grade talismans to the Chamber of Commerce in the mansion area. Most of the Chamber of Commerce in the east of the mansion are backed by the Lin family. He did not plan to sell talismans in the east of the mansion. Thinking of this, Ronan returned to the shanty area and bought some better quality talisman paper and a talisman pen made of tiger hair in the market. After buying some cow blood, he left the immortal realm of the Wanjun sect. His consciousness was stored in the 2 natal immortal trees in the botanical garden. Everything within a radius of 500 meters of the natal immortal tree was always in his mind. He sensed that no one had broken into his bungalow and there were no wizards nearby, so he moved his mind and traveled back. The next moment, his figure appeared in the botanical garden in the wizard world. After changing into the clothes of the wizard world, he walked towards his laboratory. He walked to the lab table, took out the talisman drawing materials from the storage black ring, placed them all on the lab table, and began to draw talismans. Talismans. Flying Sword Talisman, Grandmaster 81%. Golden Armor Talisman, Master 52% up pointing arrow. Wind Chasing Talisman, Master 45% up pointing arrow. Evil Repelling Talisman, Master 6%. Expand. Ronan's process of drawing talismans is also a process of improving his proficiency. He drew 100 Master Level Golden Armor Talismans and 100 Master Level Wind Chasing Talismans. The day and night in the wizard world and the immortal world are almost the same, but the proportion of day and night is different. At this time, it was late in the wizard world, and it was estimated that it would be almost evening in the immortal world. Ronan planned to go to the immortal world to sell talismans tomorrow morning. He put the talismans into the storage black ring, went out, found a restaurant, had dinner, and then returned to the botanical garden to practice the ancient wood longevity technique. The next day, Ronan traveled to the immortal world and entered the immortal realm of Wanjun sect. First, I went to the southern area of the shed, and then walked to the southern area of the mansion. The architecture and street style of the southern area of the mansion are similar to those of the eastern area of the mansion. After all, the buildings in the mansion area in the past were all inhabited by the descendants of the cultivators who founded the Wanjun sect. But later, when the Wanjun sect developed its fairyland, the mansion area was divided into multiple territories, divided into 4 areas, east, west, south and north. Ronan asked a passerby and found the Chamber of Commerce in the southern area of the mansion. The passerby said that the first immortal cultivation family in the southern area of the mansion was the Song family. Ronan followed the passerby's words and walked to the largest trading pavilion in the southern area of the mansion. This pavilion has 5 floors, and the plaque on the door reads, Treasure Pavilion. Ronan first walked into an empty alley, released his spiritual consciousness, and changed his clothes. Then, he took out a bottle of primary transformation potion from the storage black ring and drank it. Then, he used his spirit to change his appearance. As his face moved, he turned into a man in his 40s, following the appearance of his leader in his previous life. His hairline moved up a lot, and his belly was slightly bulging. After the transformation was completed, Ronan smoothed the clothes on his belly, walked out of the deserted alley, and walked into the treasure pavilion. After an incense stick of time, Ronan got 2 medium-grade spirit stones and 10 low-grade spirit stones. He refused the request to join the Song family as a talisman master, swayed his fat body, walked out of the treasure pavilion, and went to the east district of the mansion. The east district and the south district of the mansion are not separated by a wall like the mansion area and the shanty area. The residents inside can move freely, but their household registration will still be in the area where they live. As for which area is the east district of the mansion and which area is the south district of the mansion, it all depends on the cultivation families in the 2 areas. Who is more powerful and can occupy more territory? After Ronan arrived at the east district of the mansion, he went straight to the Jubao building. He used 3 middle-grade spirit stones to buy the manuscript of Blue Lotus and White Lotus art. With the manuscript, he left the immortal realm of Wanjun sect and returned to the wizard world. Ronan's figure appeared in the botanical garden. After changing into the clothes of the wizard world, he took out the secret book of Blue Lotus and White Lotus from the storage black ring. He sat down cross-legged under the natal longevity tree and flipped through it. After flipping through it, he knew that the Blue Lotus and White Lotus had a total of 20 levels. With each level, the physical energy, blood, and vitality of the flesh will be enhanced. When practicing to the 18th level, the vitality of the flesh is extremely strong. Even if there are hidden injuries in the body, it can be healed. When practicing to the 20th level, a piece of meat cut off from the body can also regenerate quickly. Ronan immediately practiced according to the secret book. The Blue Lotus and White Lotus is to nourish the flesh by refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. There are a total of 20 practice postures in the secret book. Each level corresponds to a practice posture. Ronan immediately followed the practice posture of the first level. Sitting on the ground, bending the right leg, extending the left leg, and pinching the thumbs of both hands together, he made a seal. He breathed in and out according to the method in the secret book. Suddenly, the spiritual energy of the heaven and earth nearby, that is, the energy particles, gathered towards him. The spiritual energy of the heaven and earth first entered his meridians, and then was pulled by his spirit, following the meridian route in the Blue Lotus White Lotus art, and walked in circles in his body. Not long after, his body felt slightly warm, as if he was soaking in a hot spring. Moreover, this hot spring was full of vitality. His flesh and skin seemed to have turned into plants and were growing. Ronan summoned Hongmeng and adjusted his own values. Gong method. Blue Lotus White Lotus art 1 layer 5% up pointing arrow. The Blue Lotus White Lotus art appeared in the values, and the progress of cultivation was rising rapidly. He felt his blood and chi speed up slightly, and the muscles of his whole body gradually became tight, and there was always power in his body. In the next few days, in addition to cultivation, Ronan was also looking for some magic plants that could be taken. He remembered that his elder brother and younger brother often took a kind of medicinal soup when they were training as knights. This medicinal soup needs to be made from the bones of magic beasts and dragon bone grass. Ronan thought that although the progress of the Qinglian Beiyu Gong was not slow, it was only based on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth without taking big medicine. But if he took the flesh and blood of magic beasts and ate dragon bone grass, he could speed up the training. What's more, he also had the growth green liquid and the rapid growth technique, which could promote the growth of dragon bone grass and increase the age of dragon bone grass, so as to make the medicinal effect of this herb stronger. Thinking of this, Ronan went out of Triumph City to hunt magic beasts and collect dragon bone grass. He learned hundreds of magic plants from Awen and knew where the magic plants were produced. Dragon bone grass is also a common magic plant. He knew that this grass grows in the Gult Forest outside Triumph City. Gult Magic Beast Forest. Ronan, who had changed his appearance, pointed his hand, and a turquoise sword light shot out from his fingertips, cutting a demon wild boar with dark blue fur in half. When he came to the place where dragon bone grass grew, he saw the demon wild boar eating dragon bone grass. The demon wild boar smelled the breath of a stranger and rushed towards Ronan. Generally speaking, the energy fluctuations of a third-level wizard apprentice are already quite large. If this first-level medium-level demon wild boar felt an energy fluctuation stronger than itself, it would definitely walk away. However, Ronan practiced the ancient wood longevity technique that was close to nature. After achieving the green wood spirit body, it was a bit back to nature. In the eyes of the demon wild boar, Ronan was just an ordinary person. It had not eaten blood for many days, and it was naturally excited when it saw Ronan. As for Ronan, he also wanted to collect the blood and flesh of demon beasts, so he immediately released a green wood sword light and killed the wild boar. The wild boar was weak and did not need him to sacrifice the green spirit sword at all. Ronan dealt with the corpse of the monster wild boar, collected the edible parts, and left the rest here to be used as fertilizer for the dragon bone grass. He picked 70% of the dragon bone grass on this piece of dragon bone grass, then left and went to other parts of the forest to continue collecting monster flesh and dragon bone grass. After collecting a lot of monster flesh and dragon bone grass, Ronan returned to the small bungalow and entered the botanical garden. He took out the elf dagger and pried open the 3 floor tiles of the botanical garden. Then, he condensed 30 wizard hands and inserted the dragon bone grass into the soil one by one. When he picked the dragon bone grass, he did not pull out the roots. Therefore, he needed to use the rapid growth technique to help the dragon bone grass take root. The wizard's hand was very fast. Soon, the light blue dragon bone grass was densely planted in the 3 floor tiles. Ronan's heart moved. The mother tree of the natal immortal tree immediately emitted a light golden light. With the blessing of the light of the holy tree, the power of his witchcraft will be improved. Then, he injected the ancient tree's longevity magic power into the witchcraft model of fast growth technique, and began to accelerate the growth of dragon bone grass. While urging the growth, he summoned Hongmeng to analyze it. Magic plant, dragon bone grass. Year, 0.6. Magic plant, dragon bone grass. Year, 1.1. After all, these are wild dragon bone grasses, without protection, and will be picked by humans or eaten by magic beasts. The dragon bone grass used by his brother and younger brother to make medicinal soup is at least more than 30 years old. Magic plants with years are basically cultivated. Except for the deep part of the Warcraft forest, where there may be old dragon bone grass, wild dragon bone grass in other places is generally of this age. Ronan performed the fast growth technique, and opened his hands, and a large green light shone on these dragon bone grasses. He performed the fast growth technique on the natal immortal tree, and a beam of light was cast. All the magic power of the fast growth technique acted on the natal immortal tree. At this time, this large area of light was cast, and the magic power of the fast growth technique was distributed on each dragon bone grass. After all, the dragon bone grass is not an extremely high-level spiritual plant like the natal immortal tree. Under Ronan's fast growth technique, it grows visibly. At its lower end, tender roots grew out and continued to spread toward the soil. Its height is also constantly rising upwards. Magic plant, dragon bone grass. Year, 3.2 up pointing arrow. Magic plant, dragon bone grass. Year, 4.1 up pointing arrow. The age of the dragon bone grass is increasing very quickly. After the mana of the fast growth technique is exhausted, Ronan made a green liquid of life and poured it on it. Once poured with the green liquid of life, the dragon bone grass grew more happily. 3 days passed. Ronan sat cross-legged in the botanical garden and practiced the green lotus and white lotus root technique. Green lotus and white lotus root technique, 3 layers 3% up pointing arrow. The speed of practicing a technique at the beginning is always very fast. Basically, it is improving 1 layer a day. He called up Hongmeng and adjusted his own values. Lifespan, 261 up pointing arrow. Strength, 24 up pointing arrow. Spirit, 43 up pointing arrow. Mana, 27 up pointing arrow. After practicing the green lotus and white lotus root technique, his strength increased by 8 points, almost catching up with his mana. And he also saw that his muscle lines were becoming more and more obvious when he took a bath these days. He had analyzed the city guards patrolling in the middle city and found that the strength of those guards was generally around 30. He estimated that after he practiced the green lotus and white lotus technique for a few more days, he could fight those city guards with his physical strength alone. After practicing for more than 3 hours, Ronan slowly stopped practicing, stood up, and walked to the laboratory. These days, while practicing, he also put the study of energy particle amplification on the agenda. In his mind, there is relevant knowledge about energy particle amplification. All of them were recorded in the library using Hongmeng. The books in the library recorded a method of amplifying the physical body of energy particles. That is, engrave the energy concentration magic pattern on the magic ore. Then, arrange these magic ore into a certain witchcraft formation. Under the witchcraft formation, the magic ore engraved with the energy concentration magic pattern will guide the energy particles to flow in a certain route in this witchcraft formation. And the person being amplified stands in the center of the witchcraft formation, and the energy particles flow through his body, which can amplify his body. At the same time, this witchcraft formation can also use spells to manipulate the flow rate and flow of energy particles, thereby controlling the strength of energy particles tempering the body. Ronan took out some magic guiding ores from the storage black ring. He bought these ores in Diagon Alley. They are all cheap goods, not for saving money, but to make them form a weaker witchcraft formation. After all, he had never tried to build an energy particle amplification formation before, and this formation was for his own use. So, he planned to be safe first. Just see if this witchcraft formation can be successful, feel how energy particles flow through the body, and how to control the flow rate of energy particles in the witchcraft formation through spells. As for the strength of the energy particles, whether it can temper the body, let's not worry about it for now. After he took out the magic guiding ore, he pinched a spell and recited the treasure refining technique in Qingmu sword technique. The Zhengjin Qi in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered towards the magic guiding ore. He called up Hongmeng and called out the energy gathering magic pattern. With the help of Hongmeng, he carved the energy gathering magic pattern on the magic ore. Because it was his first time carving and he was not skilled, he carved very slowly. Almost all of his energy was focused on the magic ore. The Zhengjin Qi condensed into a tiny carving knife and slowly passed over the magic ore. The stone powder fell on the magic ore bit by bit and fell on the table. Half an hour later, the energy gathering magic pattern was carved on the magic ore. Then, he used the treasure refining technique to condense the Zhengjin Qi and carve the energy gathering magic pattern on another magic ore. By the evening, all 13 magic ores were engraved with the energy gathering magic pattern. Next, he had to arrange the witchcraft formation. This witchcraft formation was a polyhedron with 13 vertices. There were 3 rooms in his bungalow. One was used as a bedroom, one as a laboratory, and the other was a botanical garden, where a magic formation for extending space had already been built. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly had an idea and decided to use 13 wizard hands to grab the magic ore and build a magic formation. In the laboratory, Ronan condensed 13 wizard hands, each holding a piece of gray-brown magic guiding ore. On the ore, there were mysterious and artistic patterns, which were the energy-gathering magic pattern. Under Ronan's control, the 13 wizard hands slowly moved and adjusted. Suddenly, when the 13 wizard hands were arranged in a certain position, Ronan's consciousness immediately sensed it. An invisible field was generated between the 13 wizard hands, and energy particles flowed in it. Because the quality of these 13 magic guiding ores was not high, and Ronan also deliberately carved the energy-gathering magic pattern incompletely. Therefore, the flow of energy particles between the fields was not fast. Ronan walked into the formation. He immediately felt that the energy particles gathered towards his body, penetrated into his body from every pore, and flowed between his muscles and blood. A slight tingling and feverish feeling arose between his muscles. Looking inside himself, he found that the blood flowed faster, and the muscle fibers vibrated and stretched slightly under the action of energy particles. Then, he slowly chanted the spell, and the energy particles in the formation immediately accelerated their flow. Ronan always paid attention to whether the energy particles would cause him harm. After observing for about an hour, he did not find that the energy particles had caused him any harm. He walked out of the energy particle amplification formation, felt the blood flow in his body speed up, and his muscles had a sense of tension. Feeling the power emerging slightly in his muscles, Ronan felt that energy particle amplification was indeed feasible. Next, he practiced the green lotus, white lotus meridian and healing techniques. If the energy particle amplification caused damage, he could immediately treat it. Ronan thought about it and put away the 13 magic guide ores first. He walked to the botanical garden and continued to practice the green lotus, white lotus meridian. In the secular world of the Shushan world, in a small town in Wei State, Ronan set up a big pot in the spacious courtyard to boil the bones and flesh of the monsters and the dragon bone grass that had grown to 50 years old. The firewood under the big pot was burning fiercely. The strange smell of monster bones and dragon bone grass floated up with the smoke. Ronan saw that the medicine soup was cooked, and after letting it dry for a while, when it was cooler, he picked up the big pot and drank it. A kind of wild taste of monsters and the bitter taste of herbs flowed between his lips and teeth. After a while, Ronan drank the whole pot of medicine soup and felt his body getting hot. This was the effect of the medicine on his body. So, Ronan's heart moved, and he traveled back to the botanical garden, sat cross-legged under his natal longevity tree, and began to practice the green lotus, white lotus gong. Green lotus, white lotus gong, 10th level, 2% up pointing arrow. After more than half a month, his green lotus white lotus gong reached the 10th level. Not only did his blood flow like a river, but his muscles also became very tight. The most important thing is that there is a kind of vigorous power in the muscles. Moreover, perhaps because the Qingmu spirit body helps the practice of the green lotus white lotus gong, this power is immediately enhanced as soon as it is born. He felt that if he cut a wound on his arm, it would heal quickly. Lifespan: 271 up pointing arrow. Strength: 36 up pointing arrow. Spirit: 46 up pointing arrow. Mana: 32 up pointing arrow. His strength had greatly improved, even more than his mana. His ancient wood longevity technique had already improved his physical body. Now that he had practiced another physical cultivation technique, his strength was naturally greater than his mana. He heard people talking in the bar and knew that the patrol guards of Triumph City were at least Golden Knights. His 36 points of strength might have surpassed the Golden Knights. Besides, I am only practicing the Green Lotus and White Lotus technique now, and I have not really performed energy particle amplification. Single quote. After practicing the Green Lotus and White Lotus technique for many days, Ronan felt that his recovery ability was not weak, so he planned to perform an energy particle amplification. He took out 13 pieces of magic guiding ore and perfected the energy gathering magic pattern on them. Then, 13 wizard hands condensed, grabbed the magic guiding ore, and arranged an energy amplification formation around himself. Sitting cross-legged in the formation, he felt the energy particles rushing towards his body. Ronan slowly recited the obscure syllables one by one, forming a spell. The flow of energy particles immediately accelerated. The blood flow suddenly accelerated, and the hot feeling in the muscles became more and more intense. He looked inward and saw that his muscles were shaking and stretching violently. At the same time, Ronan summoned Hongmeng to analyze himself. A stream of information emerged in his mind. Strength: 36. Strength: 37. Strength: 38. Ronan continued to speed up the flow of energy particles, and his strength value was slowly increasing. At this time, his forehead was covered with sweat, and the clothes on his back were soaked. Then, he took off his clothes, revealing a body of very well-defined muscles. The Qinglian Beiyu Gong, a body cultivation method, has already made a great transformation to his body. Now, it is time for energy particles to transform his body. The sound of the spell echoed in the botanical garden, and the energy particles kept shuttling back and forth in the formation, and the flow rate kept accelerating. Ronan's body was washed over and over by the energy particles, becoming stronger and stronger. He kept looking inward at himself, and the next moment, he saw that under the impact of the energy particles, a muscle fiber in one place was slightly broken. But then, a vitality emerged from his body, and soon the broken part was repaired. Ronan knew that this was the vitality generated by the Green Lotus and White Lotus art. The Green Lotus and White Lotus art is really useful. Single quote. Seeing this, Ronan thought, I can increase the intensity of the energy particle amplification. If the body is damaged, it can be repaired with the Green Lotus and White Lotus art and healing. Single quote. Thinking of this, he chanted the spell more quickly. The energy particles flowed faster. His body became hotter and hotter, his skin turned slightly red, and wisps of smoke came out of his skin. Ronan has been increasing the intensity of the energy particle amplification. If there is an injury in the body, it will be repaired immediately with the Green Lotus and White Lotus art. After more than an hour, suddenly, bang, the 13 magic guiding ores that formed the energy particle amplification formation exploded together. Dust flew everywhere and filled the botanical garden. But the quality of this magic guiding ore was poor and it could no longer withstand the flow of energy particles of this intensity. I need to buy new magic ore, Ronan thought to himself as he brushed the dust off his face. He summoned Hongmeng and checked his own values. Strength: 41. When he went to the upper city, he had analyzed the strength of the guards in the upper city from a distance. The strength is generally between 40 and 50. He heard from Paul that the guards in the upper city were all transformed by blood. That is to say, his current strength is almost as strong as the knights transformed by blood. After thinking for a while, Ronan put away his thoughts. He slapped 3 cleaning talismans on himself to clean off the stone dust on his body. Then he went to the lower city. He wanted to buy some better quality magic ore in Diagon Alley. When he went to the lower city, he passed by a restaurant and walked in thinking that he hadn't had lunch today. He ordered half a grilled porcupine, a cheese lo mein, and a pot of fruit wine. He saw the chef make this kind of grilled porcupine in the redwood territory. After killing the porcupine, the cook will hang it up and stuff it with spices such as garlic, cloves and rosemary to remove the fishy smell. After removing the fishy smell, it will be skewered on an iron fork and roasted. After the job is done, it is served hot and paired with some fruit syrup, rose vinegar, pepper, cinnamon, cloves and gravy, and then you can start eating. Ronan ordered the dishes, and after waiting for a while, half a porcupine came up. This porcupine was full of fragrance, and it was not much worse than what he had eaten in mahogany. Then, he picked up the knife and fork and began to cut the red meat of the porcupine, put it in his mouth, and felt the deliciousness bursting between his taste buds. While he ate, he listened to the people in the restaurant talking about things. A wandering knight with a scar on his face, drinking directly from a wine flask, said to a person beside him, "Do you know that the Undead Society has started to riot?" The person beside him was slightly surprised. "I heard before that the Undead Society got a lot of benefits in the wizard ruins a while ago, but I haven't heard of the riot. When did this happen? I guess I was the first one to know about it." The wandering knight took a sip of wine. "You know, I have to transport that batch of goods from the southern province to here. Along the way, I saw many traces of the Undead Society's riots. Along the way, I kept praying to the gods, hoping not to meet the people of the Undead Society, and finally arrived at Triumph City safely." Ronan listened to it and thought of what Paul said, that the leader of the Undead Society, the Holy Lord, collected many dead souls of wizards and wizard apprentices in the wizard ruins. These dead souls are very likely to be transformed into a powerful army of undead. If the Undead Society is causing chaos everywhere, then people in places where there are no wizards or even wizard apprentices will be in danger. Thinking of this, Ronan walked over and performed aristocratic etiquette with the wandering knight. "Sir, I want to ask you something, may I answer?" The wandering knight saw that Ronan was dressed as a noble and performed aristocratic etiquette, so he did not dare to neglect him and also saluted. "Sir, if you have anything to ask, just ask." Ronan said, "I wonder if you have passed through the southeast province, and how is the situation of the Undead Society there?" The wandering knight replied, "Of course, I have passed through there. On the way, I heard that the family behind the governor of the province is the Fleming family, one of the 7 major wizard families in the kingdom. Sent wizard apprentices and wizards in the family to various territories without wizards in the province to help them resist the Undead Society. Along the way, the Southeast Province is one of the provinces where the Undead Society has the least impact on the chaos I have seen." As he said, he took another sip of wine and burped. "Thank you," Ronan said, and asked the waiter to bring a pot of fine wine to the wandering knight. He returned to his seat, eating roasted pig while thinking. He had heard of the Fleming wizard family, and knew that the people in this family were proficient in weather magic. It is said that hurricanes and thunderstorms can be summoned with a wave of the hand. Ronan's father is just a middle-class noble. In terms of strength, he barely reaches the Golden Knight level. Over the years, as he has grown older, the Golden Knight's strength has also declined. In the original memory, his father also had the idea of carrying out bloodline transformation. However, his father was married at the time, and undergoing bloodline transformation, in addition to the risk of death, there was also the risk of bloodline mutation and the birth of a freak. For the sake of future generations, his father gave up the idea of taking a step further on the path of knighthood. As the high-ranking Fleming family, one of the 7 wizarding families in the kingdom, it was a bit unexpected for him to help a middle-class family. The wandering knight only heard about it, and I don't know whether it is true or not. Single quote. Thinking of this, Ronan stopped eating the barbecue porcupine. First, he went to Diagon Alley and bought dozens of magic guiding oars. Then, the lines of the evil-proofing talisman were mixed with other lines and carved on the magic guiding oar. Talisman seals are words that activate the power of heaven and earth, and are not limited to being drawn on talisman paper. Soon, he carved the patterns of the evil-repelling talisman. He wants to send these magic guiding oars back home together with letters from home. Although evil-proof talismans are not knowledge in this world, the way they activate the power of heaven and earth is very similar to the magic patterns in the wizarding world. If someone in the southeastern province inquires about this evil-proof pattern, he can probably say that it is a magic pattern he has researched to restrain undead creatures. In the wizarding world, faced with the bloody and terrifying necromancy, there are indeed wizards who have developed witchcraft and magic patterns to restrain necromancy. However, it has not been covered in the books in the library that are only available to second-level wizard apprentices. In his letter to his family, he asked about his family's situation and how to use these magic guiding oars. After arriving at the pigeon house, he divided the dozens of oars into about 10 parts, rented a dozen of the best carrier pigeons, and sent them to the barren mansion in Mahogany Land. Then, he walked back to the bungalow. When he bought the magic oar in Diagon Alley, he bought 13 pieces too much. These 13 pieces of magic guiding oar are used to arrange more powerful energy particle amplification formations. The next morning, Ronan is in the laboratory, refining the green growth liquid. Although, during this period, he spent a lot of time on strengthening his body. But I still urge my natal longevity tree to grow every day and practice the ancient tree longevity technique. With the help of the wizard's hands, he quickly refined several portions of growing green liquid. Suddenly, he felt something in his heart. Immediately call out Hongmeng and call up the values. Growth green liquid Grandmaster 1% up pointing arrow. The growing green liquid has finally reached Grandmaster. After refining the green growth liquid, he poured it on each spiritual plant. While watering, he analyzed the spiritual plants. Spiritual plant, the immortal tree. Year, 109. Spiritual plant, the immortal tree. Year, 43. Magic plant, dragon bone grass. Year, 81. Magic plant, dragon bone grass. Year, 75, spiritual plant, green cloud bamboo. Year, 1236. Spiritual plant, green cloud bamboo. Year, 1302. After the growth green liquid reaches the master level, it only needs to be continued for a while before it is complete. At that time, it will be time to change to a better growth promoting potion. I wonder if Paul has ever come into contact with students who are professors of pharmacy. Single quote. Go and ask him, hoping to get a new formula before my green growth liquid reaches perfection. Single quote. Ronan thought, then walked out the door and walked to the city. After arriving at Paul's bungalow, his consciousness swept away and he saw that Paul was at home, so he knocked on the door. Paul was inside, shouting. After hearing Ronan's voice, Paul immediately came to open the door. Hey Ronan. Paul said hello to Ronan and let Ronan in. After Ronan entered, he said directly without saying anything else to Paul. The space wizard also has a disciple of the pharmacy professor, have you heard about it? Is it possible to gain knowledge from them? Paul sighed. Their disciples are all third-level wizard apprentices. As a second-level wizard apprentice, it is really difficult for me to enter that circle. Besides, I'm not from a wizarding family. Ronan was about to say something when he was suddenly distracted. His current consciousness can cover more than 500 meters. He sensed that a disembodied existence entered his range of perception and was heading this way. In a mansion in the lower city. A man with long black curly hair and a pale face stood in the hall, holding a wand high. The wand is as white as an animal's leg bone, exuding a shuddering aura of death. He chanted a mantra, controlled the 5 resentful spirits, and headed towards nearby houses. This man is a disciple of the Necronomicon, a third-level wizard apprentice. The 5 resentful spirits he controlled were transformed from the souls of dead wizards in the necromancer ruins. The undead society wants to do bigger things and needs to collect more souls of wizard apprentices and wizards. The necromancers descend to the city, where many wizard apprentices live. In the lower city, not only is there no wizards' council stronghold, there are not even many guards patrolling the city. It's a good place for them to collect the souls of the dead. This necromancer was sent here with a second-level lower-grade amplification wand, 5 vengeful spirits, and 5 bottles of mid-level transformation potions. 3 of the 5 vengeful spirits were transformed from third-level wizard apprentices, and 2 were transformed from first-level formal wizards. They were extremely fierce. He manipulated the vengeful spirits to enter one house after another. The mortals in the houses had no idea that vengeful spirits had entered. The mortals were doing things, and the invisible vengeful spirits passed through their bodies. The souls of the mortals were eaten by the vengeful spirits, making them stronger. And the mortals who lost their souls fell to the ground, and their bodies were cold. A civilian was walking home. When he entered the door, he saw his family lying on the ground. He walked over to take a closer look and shook his family's shoulders. He felt that the muscles where he touched had lost their elasticity and there was no body temperature. Suddenly, the civilian was shocked and walked to the street. He saw a patrolling guard in heavy armor, who was about to shout. The cultists of the Necromancer Society manipulated the vengeful spirit to crash into the civilian's back and pass through his body. The civilian, whose soul was eaten, immediately collapsed in the sight of the patrolling guard. The patrolling guard was a knight after all. Although he was at the bronze level, his knowledge was not comparable to that of ordinary civilians. After seeing this situation, he guessed that it was caused by extraordinary power. He immediately took out a cannon from his waist and was about to fire a signal. However, the speed of the vengeful spirit was extremely fast. As soon as the guard took out the cannon, the vengeful spirit crashed into his armor and then passed through his back. The guard fell to the ground like a mountain. The heavy armor hit the stone slab with a clang. The cannon fell from his hand and rolled to the side. With the death of civilians and patrol guards, pedestrians on the street, even if they could not see the vengeful spirits, knew that something strange had happened, and they all shouted and ran away. Seeing this scene through the window of the mansion, the necromancer Orisha cursed. Orisha originally wanted to control the vengeful spirits, enter the house, and quietly devour the souls of the people to gradually strengthen the vengeful spirits. However, this caused panic. As long as the other patrol guards knew and sent a signal to the middle city and the upper city, he would not be able to continue to control the vengeful spirits to devour souls once the official wizards came. Orisha gritted his teeth and did not stop. He continued to control the vengeful spirits, trying to devour as many souls as possible before the official wizards of the Wizard Council came. His eyes kept looking up at the sky, and his ears listened attentively. As long as someone fired a cannon or blew a horn in the lower city, he would immediately put away the vengeful spirits. He had a mid-level transformation potion. After drinking it, he could change into another person and hide in the lower city. The top leaders of the Necromancer Society had told him that the intermediate transformation potion was much more powerful than the primary transformation potion. Only a third-level official wizard would be able to find out that he had drunk the intermediate transformation potion. Moreover, this great wizard must be very proficient in witchcraft such as insight. Thinking of this, Orisha felt that it was unlikely that he would be discovered, so he walked out of the mansion. These 5 ghosts have a certain control range. They can only be controlled within 200 meters. The ghosts went a little further, so he had to move to catch up. Orisha walked on the street, holding a white magic wand. The breath of death surrounded him. He chanted a spell while walking slowly. He manipulated the 5 ghosts and moved forward. On a street, there was a wizard apprentice. He heard the movement, looked back, and immediately saw the ghosts floating quickly. When wizard apprentices practice wizardry, they generally learn a first-level witchcraft called Wizard's Eye. This witchcraft allows wizards to see some non-physical existences such as the dead. This wizard apprentice is a second-level wizard apprentice, practicing water element witchcraft. He saw that the vengeful spirit was coming very fast, and he had no time to dodge, so he used the water bullet technique to attack the vengeful spirit. However, this vengeful spirit was transformed from the soul of a first-level formal wizard, emitting great energy. This wizard apprentice is not of high level, and the magic power contained in the water bullets he released is too small. As soon as the 5 water bullets hit the vengeful spirit, the magic power of the water bullets was maintained, and they exploded immediately. The water without magic passed through the vengeful spirit and sprinkled on the ground. And the vengeful spirit directly passed through the body of the wizard apprentice. The body of the wizard apprentice softened and fell to the ground. Suddenly, bang, a firework shot up into the sky and exploded in the sky. When Orisha saw the firework, he cursed again, and then chanted a spell to take back the 5 vengeful spirits. He ran into an alley, drank the intermediate transformation potion, became another person, changed his clothes, and walked to the other side leisurely. In Paul's bungalow, when Ronan heard the sound of fireworks, his consciousness sensed that the non-entity that entered his perception range flew back immediately. He felt that this non-entity was similar to the spirit of a monster, and it also had a gloomy feeling. Could it be a vengeful spirit? Single quote. Ronan thought to himself. Paul, who heard the sound of fireworks, didn't know what happened, so he opened the door and walked out. Ronan followed him out. What happened? This is a warning firework. Paul looked at the fireworks sign in the sky and said. However, no one responded behind him. Turning around, Ronan's figure was gone. Ronan thought that this matter was related to the Necromancer Society, so he wanted to follow them. He wanted to learn about the family's situation from the Necromancer Society believers. He didn't know whether the Southeast Province was really protected by the Fleming family as the mercenary said, and was almost unaffected by the chaos of the undead. So, he first slapped himself with several amulets, then cast a magnetic torrent, borrowed the repulsive force of the magnetic field, and his feet slightly lifted off the ground, and his body glided. At the same time, he drank a bottle of primary transformation potion and changed his appearance. He took out a cloak from the storage black ring and covered himself completely. He glided very quickly in the direction where the non-entity left. His spiritual sense was released, and everything within 500 meters nearby was reflected in his mind. He avoided all places where there were people. Soon, he sensed the cold corpses on several streets. Then, his spiritual sense sensed 5 non-entity beings, who were collected into a gem on the top of the wand by a man holding a magic wand. Then, the man drank a bottle of potion, changed his appearance, and walked leisurely in one direction. Ronan followed quietly, and when he saw the man's back, he immediately called out Hongmeng and began to analyze. After discovering that this man was just a third-level wizard apprentice, Ronan immediately used his spiritual sense to confirm that there was no one around, and then his heart moved. The magnetic current on his body suddenly increased, and his body turned into a black shadow, with a black cloak fluttering on his body, flying towards the necromancer. When he was only about 50 meters away from the necromancer, Ronan injected his magic power into the witchcraft model of Wizard's Hand. The magic power and spirit mixed together to form a wizard's hand in the air. Then, under Ronan's control, the wizard's hand clenched into a fist and blasted the back of the head of the necromancer. Bang! The back of the head of the necromancer was hit, and his eyes turned black immediately, and the whole person staggered forward. At this time, Ronan had already flown up and touched the necromancer with his hand. With a thought in his mind, he and the necromancer disappeared in the street. Ronan had only tried to bring a live chicken through before, but had never tried to bring a person through. This time, he tried it, but it was successful. The unconscious necromancer and his figure appeared in a mansion in the Wei Kingdom. Ronan left the believer behind, and with a thought in his mind, he traveled back again. After returning, he released his spiritual sense, sensing the surroundings while cleaning the traces with a cleaning talisman. He mainly cleaned the traces of the necromancer. He used the magnetic torrent to glide in the air, so he would not leave any traces. In addition, he used the amulet and had a shield on his body, so he would not leave any smell. After cleaning up the traces, Ronan used the magnetic torrent again and glided to an empty alley in the distance. He changed his clothes, walked out of the alley, restored his appearance, and merged into the crowd in the lower city. Taking advantage of the fact that the warning fireworks had not been set off for a long time, the Wizard Council had not yet investigated what happened, and the lower city had not yet been closed. He followed the crowd and walked into the middle city. After Ronan returned to the bungalow, he immediately returned to the mansion of the state of Wei. At this time, Orisha still did not wake up. Ronan deliberately used heavy hands, and Orisha's head was severely injured. If no one treated him, he would not wake up at all. Ronan put Orisha in a sack, released the witchcraft, magnetic torrent, rose to a high altitude, and glided away. He took the sack to an uninhabited forest. After releasing Orisha, he first searched Orisha's body and found a storage ring on him. When the spirit probed into the storage ring, it was found that there were books, magic wands and some bottles and jars inside. The book was the Bone Meditation Method of the Necromancer Society. Immediately, Ronan was sure that this wizard apprentice was a member of the Necromancer Society. Ronan searched his body again, and seeing that there was no other object, he injected the ancient wood longevity magic power into the witchcraft model of entanglement. He stretched out his right hand to Orisha. A dark green light appeared in the palm of his right hand. A series of tree vines burst out from the dark green light and soon wrapped around Orisha's body. Not long after, Orisha's body was firmly tied up by the tree vines. Then, Ronan cast the healing spell to treat Orisha's head injury. Soon, Orisha's head injury improved a lot and he woke up slowly. As soon as Orisha woke up, he found himself in an unfamiliar environment. The person in front of him was actually a stranger. With a shock in his heart, he immediately poured magic power into the witchcraft model of White Bone Spear. Witchcraft is to use one's own magic power to attract energy particles to cast spells. If there are no energy particles nearby, magic power can only be used to cast spells. This is the secular world of immortal cultivation, and the spiritual energy is thin. As soon as Orisha cast the White Bone Spear, the energy particles in the air gathered and condensed into a white spike like a toothpick. As soon as the white spike condensed, Ronan pinched it and inserted it into the muscle on Orisha's arm. Immediately, Orisha screamed, "Don't try to resist. Just answer whatever I ask." Ronan said coldly. "Who are you?" Orisha asked. "Pa." Ronan slapped Orisha in the face, causing blood to come out of the corner of his mouth, making him dizzy. "Tell me who you are, don't try to lie to me." Orisha said, "I am Ordain, a third-level wizard apprentice at the Jester Wizard Academy." "Lie." Ronan took out the elven dagger and scratched Orisha's arm. A piece of flesh on Orisha's arm was removed, revealing the white bones. Orisha screamed again. "Answer my question," Ronan said in a deep voice, his eyes fixed on Orisha. "I really didn't lie," Orisha shouted. "Ah!" Ronan swung the knife again and cut off another piece of Orisha's flesh. "I'm telling the truth." Under the severe pain, Orisha no longer had the rationality to think about what to answer, and immediately shouted. "I am the wizard apprentice of the Necromancer Society, Orisha Dave. Will your Necromancer Society cause chaos in the Southeast Province?" After Ronan asked this, Orisha hesitated. But the next moment, Ronan swung his knife again and cut off a piece of meat from his thigh. "Answer me," Ronan said coldly, his eyes still staring at Orisha tightly, with a sense of oppression. Orisha wailed, and his body bound by vines continued to struggle. "Please don't hurt me anymore, I say," Orisha said in a crying voice. "The Necromancer Society is not causing chaos in the Southeast Province." After listening to this, Ronan thought of what the mercenary said, that the Necromancer Society had caused chaos in the Southeast Province, but because of the resistance of the Fleming family, it had little impact on the Southeast Province. But this person from the Necromancer Society had another story. "Why?" Ronan asked. "Because the Fleming family is an ally of the Undead Society," Orisha answered. Ronan was slightly surprised when he heard this. It turned out that the Undead Society had little impact on the Southeast Province because the Undead Society did not take action on the territory of its allies. The news that the mercenary heard from others should have been deliberately spread by the Fleming family. The Fleming family wants to overthrow the Augustus royal family. Single quote. If the Fleming family goes to war with the Augustus royal family, won't they forcibly levy my family? Single quote. After hearing this news, Ronan's thoughts raced, thinking about solutions. Write a letter to his father, asking him to take his family and run away as soon as possible. No, his father is at least a middle-class noble in the Southeast Province. Maybe the Fleming family will keep a close eye on his whereabouts. After thinking about it, Ronan felt that as long as the Fleming family started a war, his father would have to join the war. If he did not join the war, the Lawrence family might be destroyed by the Fleming family first. If he joined the war, with better luck, if the Fleming family won, his father should be safe, and maybe even enjoy the fruits of victory. If the Fleming family lost the war, and the Augustus royal family was merciful, his father could continue to be a lord. If he was unlucky and the Fleming family lost the war, his father might be liquidated as a traitor. After thinking for a while, Ronan felt that reporting the matter to the royal family might be the best way. In this way, perhaps the royal family could take action in advance, destroy the Fleming family, and prevent the war from starting. Thinking of this, Ronan knocked Orisha unconscious again. Then, he used healing magic to stop the bleeding on Orisha's wound to prevent him from dying from excessive blood loss. Because he had not yet carefully looked at the things in Orisha's storage ring, if he encountered something he did not understand, he would have to ask this person. So, he did not kill him, but planned to imprison him. Ronan put Orisha in a sack and took him back to the mansion. After changing into the clothes of the wizard world, he had a thought and traveled back to the wizard world. In the bungalow, Ronan's figure appeared. Immediately, he went out, walked to an empty alley, drank the transformation potion, and changed his appearance. Then, he went to the market and bought parchment, quill pen, ink and envelope. With the wizard's hand, he wrote the news that the Fleming family wanted to overthrow the royal family. He wanted to send the letter to the Wizard Council. In order not to arouse the association of the Wizard Council, he did not write the news that the Fleming family colluded with the Dead Soul Society. After writing the letter, he walked to a base of the Wizard Council. "Sir, your letter." Ronan handed the letter to a third-level wizard apprentice in person. While the third-level wizard apprentice was confused, Ronan walked out of the Wizard Council base and used his spiritual sense to sense everything in the base. He sensed that the third-level wizard apprentice was stunned for a moment, then opened the envelope, and his body trembled when he read the letter. Then, he called other wizard apprentices to read the letter together. After the wizard apprentices passed the letter and discussed it, one of them took the letter and used the accelerated magic to rush to the upper city. Ronan returned to Wei's mansion. At this time, Orisha, a cultist of the Necromancer Order, was falling into a coma. Ronan put his mind into the Orisha storage ring that was kept close to his body. I saw the book, wand and bottle in the ring again. There are 2 books, in addition to White Bone Meditation Method, there is also a book called Wandering Notes on the Plane of the Dead. Ronan took it out and looked through it. It contains what a necromancer saw and heard after entering the plane of the dead. According to the book, the plane of the dead is extremely vast and mostly consists of wasteland. There is no sun in the sky and it is gray all the time. When some powerful undead creatures appear, the huge death energy will cover the sky, and the sky will fall into darkness. The author said that in the plane of death, undead creatures are scattered here and there. The most powerful among them, and the one who commands most of the undead creatures, is the monarch-level undead creature, also called the monarch of the undead plane by wizards. Because the undead plane is very vast and the undead creatures are scattered, the monarch also has several. The necromancer has not fully explored the necronomical plane, and it is not yet known where the monarch-level creatures in it can go with the highest strength. As far as the author knows so far, the monarchs in the plane of the dead have at least the strength of a third-level official wizard. Some monarchs of the undead plane have even reached the level of 5th-level official wizards. The book says that creatures in the necromantic plane have no interest in resources such as magic mines, magic plants, creatures, etc. that are valued by wizards in other planes. They are only interested in dead souls. Only dead souls are the material for them to evolve and become more powerful. Creatures in the necromantic plane are accustomed to living in the necromantic plane with strong death aura. They simply don't want to set foot in other worlds. Of course, if other worlds have souls of excellent quality, they may step out of the plane cracks and hunt for souls. Perhaps, the Necronomicon used the souls of many wizards and the kingdom's legendary wizard Dolifa Augustus to lure out a monarch from the plane of the dead. Single quote. Ronan was thinking while reading the book. Soon, he finished the book. After putting the book back into the storage ring, I mentally explored other things. With a thought in his mind, he took out the wand. This wand is a bone wand, and it's so white that it's a bit scary. I don't know which monster's bones it is made of. The bone staff stood on the ground, reaching chest height. At the top of the bone staff, there is a dark purple gem. Those 5 resentful spirits are in this gem. Ronan directed his consciousness towards the gem. Immediately, a ghastly and bloody feeling rushed straight into my mind. Afterwards, his consciousness could no longer penetrate deeper. In order to find out how to use this magic wand, Ronan used healing techniques and cured 70% of Orisha's head trauma. Soon, Orisha woke up faintly. After Orisha saw Ronan, her body trembled and her eyes showed fear. "Sir, I have answered your words, when can you let me go?" Orisha said tremblingly. "Tell me the information about these things and I will let you go," Ronan said. After saying that, Ronan asked Orisha about the origin of the bone staff. This bone staff is said to have been taken from a bone dragon in the plane of the dead. It is a second-level high-grade witchcraft weapon. Orisha said. There is a 10% increase in necromancy. Then what does this stone contain? Ronan shook the gem on the bone staff. Orisha heard Ronan say that this piece was a stone, and a trace of imperceptible disdain flashed in her eyes. This is the spirit-capturing magic crystal. Together with the spell, it can seal powerful resentful spirits. What is the spell? Ronan asked. How to control the resentful spirits? After hearing Ronan ask this question, Orisha was ecstatic. After he saw Ronan take out the bone staff, he had the urge to recite a spell and release the resentful spirit to kill the enemy. However, Ronan was too close to him, and he was afraid that Ronan would interrupt him before he finished reciting the incantation. Sir, the spell is complicated, but once you practice it a few times, it becomes very simple. Orisha suppressed her ecstasy and kept her tone as calm as possible. This spell is a string of obscure words, matched with ups and downs of syllables, slowly came out of his mouth. Suddenly, the spirit prisoner crystal on the top of the bone staff flashed a faint light. Along with the 5 gray rays of light, 5 resentful spirits flew out of the magic crystal. Under the control of Orisha, he rushed towards Ronan. However, these 5 resentful spirits stopped immediately when they arrived in front of Ronan. It seems that he is afraid of something and dare not move forward. Orisha kept urging her spirit, but the 5 resentful spirits still couldn't move forward. He didn't know why and opened his eyes slightly. The corners of Ronan's mouth raised slightly. Among his clothes were 40 master-level evil-proofing charms drawn with monster skins. These 5 resentful spirits are different from ordinary dead souls. They are transformed from the souls of wizard apprentices and wizards, and have a certain degree of wisdom. Feeling this force that was a great threat to them, they did not dare to move forward. It was already difficult for Orisha to control 5 wraiths. At this time, the 5 resentful spirits did not dare to move forward. No matter how much he consumed his mental power, he could not let the 5 resentful spirits move forward even half an inch. Boom! Ronan turned his wand upside down and struck Orisha hard across the face. Orisha screamed, and several teeth flew out of his mouth. This was Ronan's punishment for his murderous intent. Go on, how to control the ghost? Ronan said lightly. Orisha was frantically wondering why the ghost was afraid of Ronan, but afraid of being beaten again, he hurriedly told him the witchcraft to control the ghost. The witchcraft to control the ghost is called primary soul control technique, which is practiced by wizards during the apprenticeship stage. Ronan summoned Hongmong and wrote down what Orisha said. Then, he called up Hongmong's information flow and recited the spell slowly but accurately based on the information. Suddenly, the 5 ghosts were collected into the soul-prisoning magic crystal. Orisha's eyelids couldn't help but jump. Although his wizard talent tested in the academy was B level. But he had a high affinity for the dead plane. His talent for necromancy can be regarded as the top in the Dead Spirit Society. This enabled him to become a 3rd-level wizard apprentice at the age of 17 by relying on the bone meditation method. Now at the age of 22, he is about to reach the middle stage of a 3rd-level wizard apprentice. He estimated that he could become a formal wizard in his 30s. This is considered an excellent talent in the kingdom. However, it took him most of the day to recite the spell accurately. But the man in front of him succeeded in one try. When Orisha was surprised, Ronan dragged Orisha out of the house and threw him a branch. Remember the witchcraft model formula of the elementary spirit control technique for me. Ronan performed the entanglement technique, slightly loosening the restraints on Orisha, allowing his right hand to move. Orisha was afraid of Ronan, so he could only follow Ronan, pick up branches, and write down the witchcraft model formula of elementary spirit controlling technique on the mud. He has not yet built the witchcraft model of elementary spirit controlling technique. But the formula has been completely memorized. With the sound of rustling, a series of dense symbols were written by Orisha. Ronan looked at the series of symbols, summoned Hongmong, and replaced them with equations. After Hongmong got the equation, he immediately constructed a 3-dimensional coordinate. With the input of the equation, a 3-dimensional witchcraft model gradually took shape. After Orisha wrote down all the symbols, Ronan also knew this witchcraft model. After getting the witchcraft of elementary spirit controlling technique, Ronan focused on other things in the storage ring. In addition to the books and the bone dragon wand, the only things left in the storage ring were some medicine bottles. Ronan took out all the medicine bottles. These medicine bottles were made of brass, narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. The mouth was plugged with a wooden stopper. Ronan once used his spiritual sense to sense that after Orisha drank a bottle of potion, his appearance changed. At this time, Orisha's appearance had not changed back. He estimated that Orisha drank the transformation potion. He opened a medicine bottle and found a liquid emitting a faint white light. This potion, which he learned in the private class of pharmacy, is an elementary recovery potion. Drinking this potion can restore mental power. Wizards need to use mental power to mobilize magic power and pull energy particles. This elementary recovery potion is a very common potion. Ronan put the wooden stopper back and opened other bottles and jars. He found that there were 3 bottles, all of which were this elementary recovery potion. After opening another bottle, it was a light blue liquid. Ronan also recognized this potion, which was a primary magic potion. It was mainly used to restore magic power to wizard apprentices, and it was also a common potion. Then, Ronan continued to open the medicine bottles. Finally, he found a purple-black liquid in a medicine bottle. He immediately knew that this was not a primary transformation potion. Because the primary transformation potion was dark purple, not this color. Could it be a mid-level transformation potion? Single quote. Thinking of this, Ronan asked Orisha, and got confirmation from him. Seeing that Ronan had finally asked about all the things in the storage ring, Orisha trembled and said, "Sir, can you let me go now?" Ronan glanced at Orisha and then retracted his gaze. He originally planned to kill this necromancer after asking questions. However, he had the idea of cultivating an experimental subject. He was quite interested in witchcraft that strengthened physical fitness. Moreover, strengthening physical fitness can also increase the probability of successful foundation building. The books in the library of the Kingdom Wizard Academy roughly introduce many methods of physical enhancement. In addition to the most common blood witchcraft in the Kingdom of Valant, there is also the second most common energy particle amplification. After that, there are unpopular witchcrafts that enhance physical fitness, such as magnetic field amplification, disease body refining, etc. For the sake of safety, it is better to have an experimental subject for these witchcrafts. However, in the Kingdom of Valant, anyone who forces others to be experimental subjects without their consent is a black wizard. The person being experimented on voluntarily serves as an experimental subject and signs a contract with the wizard. However, many people are still unwilling to be experimental subjects. Therefore, many wizard apprentices and wizards in the kingdom, including Ronan, serve as experimental subjects themselves. He has read in the books in the library that these physical transformation experiments are not very meaningful when done on animals. After all, there is a big difference between the body structure of animals and humans. Sometimes, if the physical transformation is successful on animals, it will be completely different when done on humans. Some black wizards will also imprison wizard apprentices or wizards as experimental subjects. However, it is difficult to imprison wizard apprentices or wizards as experimental subjects. Because wizards can perform witchcraft, if they are to be imprisoned, a magic forbidden witchcraft formation must be used. And the magic forbidden witchcraft formation is one of the most precious witchcraft formations, and it is not so easy to obtain. However, the secular world is the best magic forbidden area. Single quote. Ronan thought to himself, with a slight smile on his face. He thought of the embarrassing look of Orisha who wanted to condense a bone spear, but ended up condensing a bone sign. With Orisha's level, in this environment with extremely low concentration of energy particles, he could not perform witchcraft with strong destructive power at all. Moreover, in this environment, even if Orisha wanted to practice meditation, he could not practice. If it were him, he would not regress if he did not practice for a long time. But Orisha's strength would regress if he did not practice for a long time. After a while, I am afraid that even the bone sign could not be condensed. After thinking for a while, Ronan performed the entanglement technique. Under Orisha's stunned gaze, he was once again tightly bound by the vines. "You said you would let me go, Before Orisha could swear, Ronan used his magic power and grabbed his hand. The vines grew wildly and stuffed Orisha's mouth. Then, he went to a big city in Wei State and bought a pair of shackles made of fine steel. After returning to the town mansion, he used the earth-moving charm to open up a cellar more than 6 meters underground. After using the witchcraft earth-melting technique to fix the shackles on the wall, he locked Orisha's limbs. Then, he cast the winding technique, and the vines flew out from the dark green light in his palm, forming a hood on Orisha's head, and the vines were stuffed into Orisha's mouth again. This move was to prevent Orisha's shouting from attracting mortals in the town. Orisha struggled violently, and the shackles kept making noises. A humming sound came out from his nose, muffled through the vine hood. Ronan ignored it, left the cellar, and covered the stone slab to block the entrance. After doing everything, he moved his mind and returned to the bungalow in the City of Triumph. Then, he took out a bottle of intermediate transformation potion from the storage ring. He wondered if he could use his knowledge of pharmacy and magic plant science, with the help of Hongmong, to deduce the formula of the intermediate transformation potion. Thinking of this, he took a crucible from the laboratory table and used a cleaning talisman on it. The dust on the crucible disappeared immediately. Then, Ronan opened the cork of the intermediate transformation potion and poured a little into it. Looking at the purple-black liquid in the crucible, he gave an order in his mind. Hongmong, start analyzing. Single quote. Suddenly, in his field of vision, a fine blue light pattern flashed in the liquid. Then, a series of information with various ingredients emerged in his mind. Ronan analyzed the messy potion ingredient information in his mind, thinking about what kind of magic plant should be used and what method should be used to generate these ingredients. After a while, more than 200 possible methods emerged in his mind. There are more than 200 kinds, which is not too much, just trying one after another. Single quote. The key is to be able to collect all magic plants. Single quote. There are more than 200 methods, and about 50 magic plants are needed. Thinking of this, Ronan went out and went to the lower city. After changing his appearance, he found Tom, a fat drug dealer in the lower town. I asked Tom and found out that there were only 27 of them in the drug store. For the others, I had to find a way to purchase them. Ronan first bought 27 kinds of magic plants and tried to refine the intermediate transformation potion. I tried it all night, but with no success. He knew that if he wanted to make an intermediate transformation potion, he would need another magic plant. Let's wait for Tom to get the goods first. Single quote. Ronan thought, looked at the sunlight shining through the window, went out the door, went to a restaurant, and ordered butter pie and honey wine for breakfast. After he was full, he returned to the bungalow and focused on the resentful spirit. He wanted to study the non-physical existence of the soul. The kingdom of Valant has no tolerance for necromancers and will kill them on sight. In the kingdom of Valant, especially the capital of the kingdom, Triumph City, it is really dangerous to study witchcraft related to the undead. So, with a thought in Ronan's mind, he returned to his mansion in the small town of Wei State in the secular world. Standing on the floor at the entrance to the cellar, I thought of Orisha, the necromancer who was trapped in the cellar. He thought to himself that it had only been less than a day, so he shouldn't need to send food to his experimental subjects. After 2 more days, he would give his experimental subjects some food to maintain their lives. Immediately, he put away his thoughts and took out the bone dragon wand. Senbai's wand was held in his hand, and the dark purple gem on the top glowed faintly in the dark room. Ronan recited the incantation of elementary spirit control technique. There is a roll of gray-white light on the dark purple gemstone, which is a resentful spirit transformed by a 3rd-level wizard apprentice and released. After smelling the stranger's breath, the resentful spirit rushed toward Ronan with a fierce intent. Ronan used his spirit to immediately control the resentful spirit. Later, Hongmong was awakened to analyze the resentful spirit. At the same time, he released his spiritual consciousness and sensed the resentful spirits. After Hongmong returned the information, he knew that the resentful spirit was actually a mass of energy. Ronan's consciousness felt the force that maintained the energy gathering, which was gloomy and bloody. I wonder what an ordinary soul is like. Single quote. Ronan thought about it, then went out of the door, went to a forest, found a wild boar, and used the soul drawing technique to pull out the wild boar's spirit. After using Hongmong to analyze it, I found that the wild boar essence was also a mass of energy, but it was gathered together by the magical power of the soul retraction technique. The power of the resentful spirit should be the magic power of necromancy. Single quote. He suddenly wondered if he could turn the Qingling sword into this energy state. The resentful spirit moves very quickly because of this light energy state. If the Qingling sword flies in this energy state, the speed will definitely increase. Thinking about it, Ronan used the green wood sword technique to activate his magic power. Suddenly, a green light flashed in front of him, and the Qingling sword appeared in front of him. He ran the Qingmu sword technique and injected mana into the Qingling sword. Then he used his spirit to turn the Qingling sword into an energy state like a resentful spirit. Ronan closed his eyes and used his spiritual consciousness to sense the Qingling sword. His mental power continued to be consumed. The Qingling sword in front of him was constantly blurring and gathering, and its state was extremely unstable. Suddenly, in the eyes of others, the Qingling sword suddenly disappeared in front of him. As soon as his heart moved, the green spirit sword in energy state passed through the wall and reached the outside of the house. The Qingling sword flew to the street. There were mortals coming and going on the street, but they could not see the Qingling sword flying in front of them. It's done. Single quote. Ronan thought. Afterwards, he changed into the attire of the immortal cultivating world and walked out of the mansion. He controlled the Qingling sword, flew back, suspended beside him, and walked on the street. No one on the street noticed the strangeness. Ronan left this ordinary town and went to a forest. He had a thought. The Qingling sword that turned into energy suddenly flashed through the air. A tree 500 meters away suddenly broke and its cut surface was smooth. After entering the energy state, the speed of Qingling sword increased several times. The Qingling sword that has become an energy state is invisible to mortals and wizards with insufficient spiritual power. Single quote. From now on, it's better to call this sword-wielding skill the invisible flying sword. Single quote. Ronan thought in his mind and waved. The green spirit sword in the energy state flew into his sleeves and robes, and was collected by him in his dantian. City of Triumph, Castle of Glory, the training room of Augustus V. This training room is dark and quiet. Augustus V sat cross-legged in the middle, drank 3 bottles of potion, and then began to practice meditation. Not long after practicing, I heard someone outside say, "Your Majesty, I have something to report." When Augustus V heard this, he cursed secretly in his heart. He is sitting on the wizard training resources of the Valant Kingdom, and the kingdom's first wizard Dalafa Augustus is also his great-uncle. People of Dalafa Augustus' generation and those before him have all died. Now, in the Augustus family, the person closest to Dalafa Augustus is him. Although his great-uncle may not necessarily teach him all the knowledge he has. But the knowledge his great-uncle taught him is enough for him to practice to the 4th level formal wizard. However, his practice progress has been slow in the past few decades. He thinks that it is because he has spent too much time and energy dealing with the affairs of the royal family. Just now, when he was practicing meditation, he was getting better and better, but he never thought that he would be interrupted by the report of his subordinates. He also thought about not letting his subordinates report when he was in seclusion. But he was always afraid that he would miss important information. This idea has never been realized. "What's the matter?" Augustus V said in the practice room. He used a sound transmission magic to transmit the sound through the thick wall of the practice room. Then, the voice of his subordinates came from outside. "Your Majesty, a stronghold of the Wizard Council received a report that the Fleming family intended to rebel." "Is there any evidence?" Augustus V asked. "No, just a letter." The subordinate outside answered. "Who is the reporter?" Augustus V asked again. The recipient of the Wizard Council did not know the content of this letter, so he did not write down the information of the sender. The subordinate answered. Augustus V thought for a while, then said, "You go and prepare, I'm going to visit my great-uncle." Chapter 91. Not long after, Augustus V, wearing high-grade silk uniforms and a cloak, stood on a gray-brown platform. On the platform, a circular witchcraft formation with complex patterns is carved. This is the teleportation formation carved by Dalafa Augustus. Augustus V was able to pass through this teleportation array and reach Dalafa's wizard tower directly. If he were to visit on weekdays, Augustus V would definitely be very particular about the royal family's appearance. Dress up in gorgeous aristocratic clothing and wear a crown. Sitting on a chariot pulled by 4 white unicorns, heading towards Dolifa's wizard tower. However, now Augustus V wanted to discuss secret matters with Dolifa. In addition, now is the time when the wizard family is planning to cause chaos. Going there with such a big fanfare will definitely alarm the family who is planning to cause chaos. There were 2 other people standing next to Augustus V. One is the royal wizard Bruna, who is a 3rd-level official wizard, the true knowledge wizard, who is proficient in binding witchcraft. The other one is Olaner, the royal guard chief. Although the wizard is a true wizard, he has never joined the wizard council and has always called himself a knight in front of others. Bruna recited a spell, and a white light rose from the teleportation array under the 3 people's feet. But the 3 people were not teleported, because after activating the teleportation array with a spell, Dolifa still needs to cast a spell to allow the people in this teleportation array to teleport there. After a while, Dolifa should have agreed to the teleportation. The white light of the teleportation array suddenly swelled, and the 3 of them were rolled up. The next moment, the white light faded away and the 3 people disappeared. In Dolifa's wizard tower, the figures of 3 people appeared on a teleportation array. This teleportation array is on the 99th floor of the wizard tower. Through the windows of the wizard tower, you can overlook the entire Triumph City. From the upper city with luxurious buildings, to the middle city with orderly and clean streets, to the dense and slightly chaotic lower city with buildings, to the villages, markets and the endless sea outside the triumphal city, you can all have a clear view. On the 99th floor, except for the teleportation array they teleported over, there was almost nothing. There is only one spiral staircase leading upward. But it was pitch black above, and there was no telling what was there. But Augustus V, Olaner and Bruna all knew that going up the stairs was Dolifa's training room. However, Olaner and Bruna had only seen Augustus V walking up, but they had never been there. In fact, as a close confidant of Augustus V, they rarely saw Dolifa, the legendary wizard of the kingdom. The few times they saw each other, they were all so overwhelmed by the energy fluctuations in Dolifa that they were almost breathless. Even if they were asked to meet Dorifar, they would not. After Augustus V nodded to Olent and Bruna, he walked up the spiral staircase and disappeared into the darkness. The next moment, Augustus V appeared in a spacious room. The room is as bright as day, and I don't know where the light comes from. Its surrounding walls are all bookshelves with elegantly decorated books arranged on them. An old man wearing a light brown robe, with slightly curly white hair, and a long beard hanging from his chin sat in the center of the room, reading a thick ancient book with his mental strength. "Uncle," Augustus V saluted. "Sit." The old man, who was also the legendary wizard Dolifa Augustus of the kingdom, said something. Augustus V came to Dolifa's and sat on the ground. "What happened outside?" Dolifa Augustus said calmly. Augustus V said, "During the exploration of the necromancer ruins, many of the dead wizards came from the wizard family that I secretly supported. It seems that among the other 6 wizarding families, some have the intention to cause trouble and are colluding with the Society of the Dead. It's just that at this time, I haven't determined which family it is. Today, I received news that the Fleming family intends to cause chaos. The elder of the Fleming family, Langton Fleming, has been the Grand Wizard for more than 50 years. His strength is estimated to have become a lot stronger. If he unites with other families or wizard organizations, he will indeed cause chaos, confidence. There are also great wizards in charge, including the Evans family and the Stephen family. If these 3 wizard families unite, plus the Necromancer Society, it is very likely to threaten our royal family. Uncle, why don't we attack these 3 families first? We need them." After hearing this, Dolifa said calmly, "If it is determined that there is only one family, I can still take action and eliminate it, but annihilating 3 wizard families with great wizards at the same time will greatly weaken the strength of our kingdom of Valant. Do you know why we allow other wizard families to exist even though we know that they may threaten the Augustus family?" Augustus V shook his head. Dolifa said, "This is because it is very likely that there will be wizards in the Wizard Islands who want to occupy our continent, just like our ancestor Augustus I. And we need the other 6 wizard families to maintain the power of the Valant kingdom. Although we, the wizard family, may fight internally in the Valant Kingdom, if there are foreign wizards invading the mainland, we will most likely fight externally. If we kill 3 wizard families with true wizards, if 2 legendary wizards come to the Wizard Islands and want to occupy this continent, we will have no way to resist. But if these 3 wizard families really unite, our Augustus will be in great danger. Augustus V said. Dolifa Augustus paused and sighed. Moreover, with my current strength, I can no longer destroy any of these 3 families with the force of thunder before the other families react. As he said this, he pulled up the sleeve of his right hand, revealing a hand with wrinkled and dark skin, surrounded by a faint black air. Augustus V looked at it and couldn't help but be surprised. Dolifa Augustus said, in the ruins of the Necromancer, the Holy Lord of the Necromancer Society opened a passage to the Necromancer Plane, which attracted a Necromancer monarch whose strength was comparable to that of a legendary wizard. Behind him, there was a Necromancer army that came one after another. In order to destroy the passage as quickly as possible and prevent other monarchs from the Necromancer Plane from coming, I had to use a powerful witchcraft. This powerful witchcraft left me with a curse. At the same time, the battle with the Necromancer monarch also caused me to suffer serious injuries. The combination of the curse and the injury has made me what I am now. Augustus V couldn't help but feel a little cold when he saw that his great-uncle had reduced his strength at this critical moment. Dolifa seemed to know what Augustus V was thinking. As a king for many years, you should also know that many things do not necessarily need to be solved with force. The fault of the families who want to cause chaos now is that they have colluded with the Necromancer Society, and the Holy Master of the Necromancer Society is most likely a great wizard who came to organize the Wizard Islands. The wizarding family that has been rooted in this continent for many years will eventually feel disgusted with outsiders. What you have to do is to first identify which of the 6 wizard families want to cause chaos, and which families hate outsiders coming here and are willing to maintain the status quo. Next, you have to unite as many families as possible that are willing to maintain the status quo and attack the families that want to cause chaos. At the same time, you also need to find some wizard families that have the potential to produce great wizards, and then train them. After the wizard family that wants to cause chaos is eliminated, other families will have to take their place. Of course, if the kingdom's power is vacant after the rebellious wizard family is wiped out, you can also invite the wizard family here in the Wizard Islands. But this is a last resort strategy. As I just said, people who are rooted in the Dawn continent don't like outsiders. Doing this will cause dissatisfaction among some wizard families. Furthermore, we are not familiar with the families from the Wizard Islands, their knowledge of research, and their concepts of behavior. Sometimes, you can't guess whether they really want to take root here when they come to this continent, or they want to obtain living experimental subjects more conveniently, or they want to use the people of this continent as resources to interact with aliens. Plain exchange of creatures. Augustus V couldn't help but smile bitterly after hearing this. It's not easy to distinguish between allies and dissidents, between alliances and divisions. Dolifa laughed a few times, with a thick voice, and the slightly curled white beard on his chin trembled with laughter. Yes, in my opinion, politics and interpersonal relationships are more difficult than studying wizard knowledge. But that's exactly what your king will do. To the Augustus royal family, I'm just a thug. When Augustus V heard Dolifa's words, he suddenly became a little frightened and waved his hands repeatedly. No, 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 uncle, you are a legendary wizard, a being who towers over mortals, and the knowledge you possess in your chest is beyond the imagination of mortals. Since my grandfather's generation, the kingdom's several crises could not have been resolved without you. You call yourself a thug, I really can't bear it. Southeast Province, Fengali Castle. Windelier Castle is the castle where the Fleming family lives. The castle is located on a large mountain in the southeastern province. It stands high, like a giant beast standing high, overlooking the earth. All facilities in the castle are available. The streets are clean, in stark contrast to the filthiness of some middle and lower noble cities in the southeastern provinces. There are several wizard towers in the castle, as well as a main castle. In the main castle, the patriarch of the Fleming family, Joseph Fleming, was discussing matters with members of the family. Joseph Fleming was a tall man, apparently in his 40s, with sharp eyes and a short beard on his chin. He is a third-level official wizard, the Wizard of True Knowledge. In the castle's meeting hall, he sat at the head of a long classical table, with members of his family lined up on both sides. Up to now, the Fleming family has become quite large. In addition to the main line, there are also 5 side branches. At this time, he and his family members were taking stock of the strength of other families in the southeastern province. He had to integrate other nobles from the southeastern province into an army, so he needed to know the strength of each noble. He was holding a long sheepskin scroll, which contained information about various families in the southeastern province. The patriarch of the Baruch family is a first-level wizard apprentice, but the second and third sons are second-level wizard apprentices. The Parn family has a third-level wizard apprentice. Yosef looked down row by row, from the nobles in the front to the nobles in the back. The Lorenz family, the patriarch, Leighton Lawrence, is a golden knight. The eldest son, Leon Lawrence, is a late silver knight. I have heard of this person. The second son, Ronan Lawrence, is a member of the Kingdom Wizard Academy. Sorcerer's apprentice. Third son Bran Lawrence, a 14-year-old silver knight. Yusuf murmured as he watched. After reading this, a tribesman sitting at the bottom said, "Uncle Yusuf, there is something that needs to be corrected." Leighton's second son, Ronan, was rumored to have excellent wizard qualifications and entered the Kingdom Wizard Academy to study. But I asked people in Triumph City to investigate and found that this person's wizard qualifications are not very good. He was eliminated in the qualification test of the Kingdom Wizard Academy. After this person was eliminated, he has stayed in Triumph City. This person must have lied to the family, saying that he entered the Kingdom Wizard Academy, and then relied on the family's funding to eat, drink, and gamble in the capital of the kingdom. Yusuf nodded. It's a pity. It would be great if it was true. His family is under my control. If he really has good wizard qualifications, he can be used by me. However, this family still has good prospects. Leon Lawrence previously led an army composed of militiamen and suppressed a rebellion with a small attack on a large one. His war talent is as valuable as his wizard qualifications. And Leighton's third son, the 14-year-old Silver Knight, is a good candidate to transform into a knight. After he reaches the peak of the Golden Knight, we will bring him into the family service, find a blood wizard, and arrange blood transformation for him. This family can pay attention. If this family obeys my orders in the future, I can promote this family from the provincial middle-level nobles to the upper-class nobles. That will be a class leap for this family. Waiting patiently for Yusuf to finish speaking, another tribesman sitting at the bottom said, "Your Excellency, I have something to report. Because the relationship between this clan member and Yusuf is far away, far less than that of the previous clan member who was close to Yusuf, the tone was much more respectful. In accordance with your instructions, I intercepted and checked the letters to and from the province. One day, a wizard's apprentice's falcon caught several homing pigeons. These homing pigeons have been transformed by witchcraft. They fly extremely fast and come from a long distance. I opened the letter from the carrier pigeon and checked it out. I found that it was a family letter and belongings sent by the second son of Leighton Lawrence, Baron of Redwood Territory. In the letter at home, he asked if the family was okay amid the rebellion caused by the Necromancer Society. He divided it into several letters and included dozens of magic stones that he said could restrain the necromancy. After hearing that there was a stone that could restrain necromancy, Yusuf's eyes became sharper and he asked, "Have you checked if it's true?" Although he had joined forces with the Necromancer Society, he just wanted to use the power of the Necromancer Society to push himself to the throne of king. But he knew very well what kind of wizard the Holy Lord of the Necromancer Society was. This wizard from the Wizard Islands had extreme ideas and wanted to sacrifice the lives of the entire continent to exchange the knowledge and resources of necromancy with the powerful creatures of the Necromancer plane. He would only cooperate with this group of black wizards temporarily. When he really became king, he would definitely gather all the power of the country to kill all the wizards of the Necromancer Society. So, during this period of time, he had been secretly sending people to collect witchcraft and magic tools that could restrain necromancy, waiting to attack in the future. The tribesman said, "That magic stone really has the power to restrain undead creatures. We cast necromancy and summoned a low-level skeleton from the undead plane, and found that the skeleton was quite afraid of the magic stone. We found a formal wizard who was proficient in making witchcraft scrolls and copied the magic pattern on the magic stone onto the witchcraft scroll. But the witchcraft scroll is useless against the skeleton. It seems that Layden's second son had an adventure in Triumph City. After listening, Yusuf said, "The method of drawing this magic pattern, I want it." Quote, "There are two things you need to do. First, send someone to Triumph City to approach Layden's second son to see if Ronan Lawrence got the magic stone from someone else or carved it himself, and see if he can get it. Second, send someone to Redwood Territory to tell Layden Lawrence about this matter and ask him to write to his son to ask about the way to get the magic stone or the method of carving the magic pattern." "Yes, Your Excellency." After hearing this, the tribesman immediately responded, then left his seat and arranged for someone to do it. Then, Yusuf continued to move the long sheepskin scroll up with both hands and looked at the family information. Triumph City, Ronan's bungalow. In the laboratory, Ronan was refining the green liquid of growth. 20 or so wizards were busy. On the laboratory table, the pestle floated in the air and pounded towards the grinding mortar. Glass test tubes and other medicine refining equipment moved in the air, carrying out dilution, extraction and other steps in an orderly manner. Less than an hour later, nearly 10 portions of green growth liquid were refined by Ronan. Suddenly, he felt something in his heart, so he called out Hongmeng and adjusted the value. "Green growth liquid perfect. I have finally reached the top of my proficiency in this growth potion." Single quote. Ronan thought, "I need to put the matter of finding a better formula on the agenda as soon as possible." Single quote. "There must be wizards in the Druid school who are studying growth potions. But Awen is only good at magic plants and witchcraft, and is not familiar with potions. He couldn't ask Awen for a better formula. I still have to focus on the students of the Kingdom Wizard Academy who are formal wizards." Single quote. While thinking, he manipulated the wizard's hand, picked up the green growth liquid, and walked towards the botanical garden. After walking to the botanical garden, the space in front of him suddenly expanded. Originally, it looked like a room of about 10 square meters from the outside, but after entering, it immediately became a space of about 100 square meters. In front of him was a 7-meter-high tree with a canopy. This was his mother tree of the immortal tree, which grew taller and taller with the increase of years. The mother tree was planted directly in the land of the bungalow, and the roots spread deep underground. Because of the growth of the immortal tree, Ronan studied the space magic pattern for several days. And bought better magic stones and engraved the space magic pattern on them. Then, he rearranged a witchcraft formation to cover the entire room and the underground part. He transformed the bungalow a lot. The wall was integrated with magic stones, the floor tiles were demolished by him, and there was a cellar nearly 10 meters underground. If the landlord came to check the bungalow temporarily, it would be difficult to transform it back for a while. For this reason, he went to find a toother and spent money to buy the bungalow. Although this bungalow is simple and narrow, it is in the city of Triumph after all, and the price is really expensive. Ronan spent several days in the world of immortal cultivation, looking for several businesses belonging to different immortal cultivation families in the 4 residential areas of the east, west, south and north, and sold a lot of talismans to save enough spirit stones to exchange for gold coins to buy this bungalow. Next to the mother tree of the natal immortal tree is the natal immortal tree sap tree, which is already as tall as a person's head at this time. Because it is still young, it is not very noticeable. In the botanical garden, in addition to the 2 natal immortal trees, there are other magic plants, all bought by Ronan to attract attention. These magic plants, like the natal immortal tree, also absorb energy particles to grow themselves. Most of them are expensive and look strange. There is a bright-colored piranha plant with saliva. A magic tree, that is 1 person tall and emits a faint green light. Its leaves can be used to make potions that help wizards meditate. A pot of purple mushrooms can be used to make a pleasant potion. The strange magic plants almost filled the entire botanical garden. Ronan poured the green liquid of growth on the roots of the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. While pouring, he summoned Hongmeng to analyze the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. Spiritual plant, the natal immortal tree. Year, 131 up pointing arrow. As soon as the green liquid of growth seeped into the soil, it was absorbed by the roots of the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. Ronan felt connected to the natal immortal tree, and a feeling of vitality immediately rose in his heart. After watering a portion of the green liquid of growth, he went to water the natal immortal tree. Spiritual plant. Natal immortal tree. Year. 51 up pointing arrow. The two natal immortal trees continuously absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Part of it was used to grow itself, and part of it was fed back to him, forming mana in his dantian. After watering the two natal immortal trees, Ronan went down to the cellar to water the Qingling Qian bamboo. Spiritual plant. Qingling Qian bamboo. Year. 1561 up pointing arrow. Spiritual plant. Qingling Qian bamboo. Year. 1493 up pointing arrow. The quality of Qingling Qian bamboo is not exactly the same. Even if each Qingling Qian bamboo is watered with the green liquid of growth once a day, the years of growth will differ every day. Over time, the years will differ by decades. After the watering was completed, Ronan cast the sorcery, Magnetic Torrent. An anti-geomagnetic force was generated on his body, rising towards the entrance of the cellar. After putting the crucible in place, he came under the mother tree of the natal immortal tree and began to cast the Speed Growth Technique. Speed Growth Technique Grandmaster 3% up pointing arrow. After a long period of growth, the Speed Growth Technique has made considerable progress. Under the Speed Growth Technique, the roots of the natal immortal tree are gradually extending. Its age is also gradually increasing. After the mana is completely exhausted, Ronan sits cross-legged under the natal immortal tree and practices the ancient wood immortality technique. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth enters the body, and the mist-like immortality mana in the dantian rotates again. A faint golden light is released from the natal immortal tree, shining on Ronan. Ronan's practice speed is further improved. When Ronan was practicing, he called out Hongmeng in his heart and called up the value. Lifespan. 312 up pointing arrow. Strength. 43 up pointing arrow. Spirit. 51 up pointing arrow. Mana. 38 up pointing arrow. Cultivation realm. Chi refining level 9. Wizard level. Level 3 wizard apprentice. Skills. Ancient wood longevity skill 12% up pointing arrow of the 15th level. Green wood sword skill 23% of the 6th level. God evolving skill 85% proficient. Green lotus white lotus skill 22% of the 10th level. After a long period of practice, the ancient wood longevity skill reached the 15th level, not far from the 20th level. The improvement of the ancient wood longevity skill made him absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth much faster. 3 days later, Tris Fleming rode a fast horse transformed by witchcraft, cast the acceleration witchcraft, and came to Triumph City. He came from one of the 5 major branches of the Fleming family. After receiving the order from the family, he came here to find a man named Ronan Lawrence, and got the magic pattern that restrained necromancy from him. The reason why he was sent here was because he had stayed in Triumph City for a period of time before. 10 years ago, when he was still 17 years old, he also participated in the wizard qualification test of the Kingdom Wizard Academy. After being eliminated, he cheated the family and used the money funded by the family to have fun in Triumph City for a period of time, and spent a period of unforgettable days. Therefore, he is very familiar with Triumph City. He is even more familiar with the places of entertainment where the children of nobles go in and out. This time, the Fleming family sent him here, and they also kept the idea that the same kind can understand the same kind better. Now, 10 years later, he is already a 3rd-level wizard apprentice. According to the information obtained by the Fleming family, Ronan wizard qualifications are not good, and it is estimated that after a year, there will be no progress in the wizard's path. Sending a 3rd-level wizard apprentice is already a waste of manpower. Tris rode into Triumph City, put his horse down in the stable in the outer city, and then went into the middle city and found the best hotel to stay. The family gave him a lot of money to carry out the family mission this time, so he could let loose. Tris slept in the hotel for several hours, and it was not until the afternoon that Tris got up. He did not go to inquire about Ronan's news, but went to the tavern and the place of wind and dust, had fun, and then returned to the hotel. It was not until the sun was high in the sky the next day that he got up, washed up, and went out. According to the information the family had inquired about before, he found the small attic. But after arriving and knocking on the door, he found that the person living in the small attic was no longer Ronan. He asked the tenant Ronan's name, and the tenant replied that he didn't know. Triss frowned and left the attic, thinking about how to find Ronan again. After walking for a morning, having lunch, and playing in the place of Wind and Moon in Triumph City, he had an idea in his mind. In the afternoon, he went to several pawnshops in Triumph City, spent money, and inquired about Ronan's news. After asking around, I just found out that Ronan Lawrence actually bought a bungalow in the city center of Triumph City. Real estate in Triumph City is expensive, especially in the city center. Although the Baron of Redwood, Leighton Lawrence, is quite wealthy, his eldest and third son's night training is very expensive, so he probably won't have extra money to buy real estate in Triumph City. This guy really has an adventure. Single quote. Triss thought to himself, and went to Ronan's bungalow. His plan was to follow Ronan's movements first. See where this person usually goes to see if he can find some clues. If not, he will approach Ronan for a face-to-face talk. On this day, Ronan was sitting cross-legged under his natal immortal tree, which was emitting a faint golden light, practicing the ancient wood immortality technique. His spiritual consciousness was released from between his eyebrows, and under the blessing of the light of the holy tree, everything within 600 meters was captured in his mind. Suddenly, he sensed a person more than 300 meters away. He walked behind a big tree, then stopped, poked his head out a little, and looked towards his bungalow. And he didn't leave for a long time. He sensed that the energy fluctuations released by this person should be a third-level wizard apprentice. What does this person want to do? Single quote. Ronan thought in his heart, slowly stopped his power, put on his clothes, and went out, wanting to see the next move of this person to judge whether this person came for him. He walked towards a street and immediately sensed that the person came from behind a big tree and followed him from a distance. Sure enough, he came to find me. Single quote. Ronan used his spiritual sense to sense while walking towards the lower city. After arriving in the lower city, he rented a horse and rode out of the city. The person following him cast witchcraft and followed closely. After leaving the city, Ronan whipped the horse's butt with a whip and ran wildly. The energy fluctuations of the person behind him increased again, as if a gust of wind lifted the person up slightly, and he followed closely at the same speed as himself. Ronan deliberately bypassed the village outside the city of Triumph and rode his horse into a dense forest. After he used his spiritual sense to confirm that there was no one else around, he immediately injected the ancient wood longevity magic power into the entanglement witchcraft model. Immediately, the ground under Triss, who was riding the wind, bulged, and then a series of tough and thick vines broke out of the ground, growing wildly and entangled towards him. The next moment, they tightly entangled his right foot. Triss was suddenly attacked, shocked, and hurriedly raised his hand, releasing several invisible wind blades towards the vines. However, this vine was tougher than he expected. After several wind blades, only 3 vines were cut off, and there were still several vines wrapped around his feet. Suddenly, the vines swung violently. Triss flew up involuntarily and crashed into a thick tree trunk. Bang! Triss's back hit the tree trunk, making a dull sound, and his spine broke immediately. Like most wizard apprentices, he planned to use witchcraft to transform his body after being promoted to a formal wizard for the sake of safety. Therefore, his body was only stronger than that of ordinary mortals, and naturally could not withstand such a collision. Suddenly, a mouthful of blood spit out from his mouth. Then, the vines moved again. Triss's back hurt so much that he almost fainted. At this time, he could not concentrate on releasing witchcraft to resist the vines that were wrapped around him. The vines took him and swung him in the air again. Bang! This time, his head hit a tree trunk hard, and his eyes went black and he fainted. Ronan pulled the reins, and the horse in front raised its hooves, turned its head, and went towards Triss. When he walked in front of Triss, he performed the entanglement spell. Immediately, the thick vines shrank back into the soil. Ronan got off the horse, released his spiritual sense, and after confirming that there was no one around, he touched Triss. With a thought in his mind, he took Triss and traveled to the mansion of the Wei State town in the secular world of the Shushan world. Then, he released vines to Triss lying on the ground, and entangled him tightly. Then, he returned to the woods of the wizard world. He used the cleaning talisman to clean up the traces of himself and Triss. After all the traces were cleaned up, he thought that what happened here should not be known to anyone. But the next moment, he seemed to think of something and turned to look at the rented horse. The horse was grinning, breathing heavily, and watching everything quietly. The wizarding world is an extraordinary world rich in energy particles. When Ronan was still in Mahogany territory, he had heard of the strange story of a chicken that could speak human words. He was not sure whether the horse in front of him would give birth to wisdom in the future. So he reached out to the horse. When the horse saw Ronan reaching out, he thought he was going to touch his head in an intimate manner, so he gave a habitual whine and put his head over. But when Ronan touched the horse's head, the surrounding environment suddenly changed. From a vast forest, it turned into a closed room. The horse suddenly saw the environment change and was frightened. The horse's body trembled and its hooves were about to trample wildly. Ronan was afraid that the horse's hoof would not only trample to death the person following him lying on the ground, but also collapse the cellar beneath the room. He immediately pulled the reins. This horse had no idea that the human in front of it was stronger than it. The horse's head was pulled by Ronan, and the body was dragged out uncontrollably by Ronan. There was a sound of hoofs scraping the ground in the room. The horse was dragged behind the courtyard by Ronan and was about to go crazy again, but Ronan picked up the whip and whipped the horse violently. Soon, the horse immediately subdued and did not dare to make any more trouble. Ronan dragged the horse to the stable, tied the reins, and returned to the wizarding world with a thought in his heart. After returning to the wizarding world, Ronan scanned the surrounding area with his spiritual consciousness. After confirming that no one was around, he used the cleaning charm to clean up the traces and walked back to Triumph City. He first returned to Zongcheng, found the horse renter, gave him the money, and bought the horse. Afterwards, we returned to the bungalow and entered the botanical garden. After releasing his spiritual consciousness and making sure that no one was staring at his bungalow, he felt a move in his heart and returned to the world of cultivating immortals. He arrived at Triss's side and found out the magic storage device on his body, a storage bracelet. Then, he used healing techniques to heal his head trauma by 7 to 8 points, allowing him to wake up. After Triss woke up and saw that the person in front of him was Ronan he was following, he immediately trembled in shock. He immediately knew that the vines that suddenly entangled him were the witchcraft performed by this person. The information given by the family is wrong. Single quote. An idea popped into his mind. According to the family's intelligence, Ronan Lawrence was just a wizard with poor qualifications. I just started practicing about a year ago, so after a year, I probably won't be able to improve much. But in today's battle, my wind blade could not even cut through the opponent's trees and vines. It can be seen that this person's witchcraft and magic power are stronger than his own. Moreover, the most important thing is that this person actually has the means to detect himself who is following him far behind. This person will never be a wizard apprentice with poor qualifications and weak strength like family intelligence. Thinking of this, Triss couldn't help but sweat. Errors in intelligence can cost a person his life. Sir Lawrence, I am Triss of the Fleming family. This is a misunderstanding. Please let me go. Triss was afraid that Ronan would hurt him again or kill him, so he immediately revealed his identity. He thought that as a member of one of the 7 major families in the kingdom, he should be able to exert a certain deterrent effect on the children of the middle-level nobles of this province and would not harm him easily. Why are you following me? Ronan asked. Triss said, Count Fleming found out that you have a magic pattern that can restrain necromancy, so he sent me here to ask who carved this magic pattern. I should have invited you to the tavern and brothel to drink and have fun while talking to you. But I never thought that my head would get hot and I would do something as stupid as stalking. After Ronan asked about the person's purpose, he ignored the person for the time being. Instead, he took out the person's storage bracelet and reached in with his spirit. Triss saw that Ronan didn't want to let him go after asking him, and he suddenly panicked. Moreover, she took out his storage bracelet and checked it in front of him, obviously to get his things. If Ronan wanted to let him go, he would naturally not take his things. Otherwise, when he returns and explains all this to the Fleming family, Lawrence, a middle-class noble, will suffer. So, now that Ronan wants to take his things, he clearly doesn't want to let him go, and may even silence him. Thinking of this, Triss's eyes widened, he was frightened and anxious, and his body couldn't help but tremble. Ronan Lawrence, my family knows that I am coming to Triumph City. If I can't go back, my family will doubt you, and the Lawrence family will suffer. Ronan listened and was unmoved. In front of outsiders, he has not exposed even half of his strength. Now outside, others still think that he is a first-level wizard apprentice. And this person is a third-level wizard apprentice. Even if the Fleming family couldn't find this person's whereabouts, they would guess that it was a wizard apprentice from Triumph City or a wizard who killed him, but not himself. What's more, if you put this person back, your strength will be exposed. Ronan thought as he mentally scanned the storage bracelet. In the bracelet, there is a copy of the Fleming family's meditation method, 4 magic wands, a notebook, some Valant gold coins and some medicine bottles. Ronan first took out the notebook and read it. The handbook records Triss's reflections on practicing meditation and the 2 witchcraft he practiced. A first-level medium witchcraft, primary wind control. The other is the first-level superior witchcraft, initial thunderstorm. The deduction formulas of the 2 witchcrafts are written in the notebook. Ronan looked at the notebook and knew that Triss's wind acceleration and wind blade were all performed with initial wind control. Moreover, looking at the speed at which Triss performed the wind blade, he knew that Triss had built a witchcraft model. After initial wind control, there is initial thunderstorm. Ronan looked at Triss's manuscript and knew that mastering initial thunderstorm is more difficult than initial wind control. Moreover, in the manuscript, Triss's deduction in the front was fine, but in the back, there were some logical and arithmetic errors in the deduction. It seems that Triss has not yet fully mastered the witchcraft, initial thunderstorm. Ronan flipped through it and quickly memorized the spells of the 2 witchcrafts. Then, with the help of Hongmong, he converted the formula symbols in the manuscript into the formula symbols he was familiar with. After entering Hongmong, the witchcraft models of the 2 witchcrafts were generated in the 3-dimensional coordinate system. Ronan first saved the formula and the witchcraft model in Hongmong. When he has time, he will practice these 2 witchcrafts. Then, Ronan put away the notebook and focused his attention on the 4 magic wands. Among the 4 magic wands, one is thicker and different in style from the other 3. The other 3 are thinner and have the same style. Ronan took out the 4 magic wands. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, he found that the thicker one was obviously made of wood that is conducive to the conduction of magic power, and it should be an amplification magic wand. And among the 3 magic wands with the same style, there are magic patterns inside, which contain a violent power. The wand contains magic patterns inside, and Ronan has also seen related descriptions in the books of the Kingdom Wizard Academy. This kind of wand is called an instant wand. It contains a witchcraft that can be triggered by injecting magic power. However, this wand is disposable, and after the witchcraft is performed, the wand is also destroyed. What witchcraft are sealed in these 3 wands? Ronan asked Triss, grabbing his wand. Triss was still full of anger, staring at Ronan with his eyes. If you don't let me go back, you and your family will pay a heavy price, ah. Before Triss could finish speaking, Ronan took out the dark elf's dagger and swung it violently, causing several drops of blood to splash. Triss screamed, and his thighs were immediately covered in blood. But it was his thigh that had a small piece of meat cut off by Ronan. Although it was a small piece, Triss, who had always been pampered, had never suffered such injuries before, and he immediately screamed and cried. If you don't answer my question, I'll cut off another piece. Ronan said calmly. You, the Fleming family, are cooperating with the Society of the Dead. Have you ever seen any skeletons? Although my knowledge of anatomy is relatively shallow, it is enough to cut you into a skeleton and keep you alive. Listening to what Ronan said, Triss immediately imagined how miserable he would be. He was so stressed that he cried even harder. If I tell you, can you let me go? Of course, Ronan said. As long as you tell me, and you promise not to tell anyone about this matter, I will let you go. Okay, I'll say it. Triss's face was covered in sweat from the pain, and a layer of sweat film formed on his face, which shone brightly in the dim light. The 3 wands in your hand are elementary thunder wands, with the power of thunder sealed inside. Then, the magic pattern inside is the thunder magic pattern. Single quote. Ronan immediately used his spiritual consciousness to penetrate into the magic wand, and with the help of Hongmong, recorded the magic pattern. He had seen the method of making an instant wand in the books in the library of the Kingdom Wizarding Academy. It is to learn the knowledge of seals and the knowledge of magic patterns at the same time, and combine the two. Another prerequisite for making an instant wand is to obtain wood that can seal power. Wood that can seal power is very expensive. Ordinary wood cannot withstand the force and will explode during the manufacturing process. Thinking of this, Ronan couldn't help but think of 3 items that were very similar in use. Witch scrolls, instant wands and talismans. The paper for witchcraft scrolls also needs to be made of precious wood. If the magic pattern is drawn on ordinary paper, it will not work at all. But witchcraft scrolls are rarely instantaneous. To release a witchcraft scroll, it is often necessary to use magic power to pass through the paper and conduct it on the magic lines to trigger witchcraft. In this way, the release speed is definitely not as fast as transmitting magic power to the witchcraft model. The advantage of the witchcraft scroll is that it is cheaper than the instant wand and consumes less magic power than the witchcraft model. In addition, witchcraft scrolls also have the advantage of being able to record extremely powerful witchcraft. Generally speaking, the entire scroll recording extremely powerful witchcraft is very long, and requires a long period of chanting to cast the witchcraft. Some wizards often cast a protective witchcraft on themselves, and then start chanting to perform the great witchcraft on the witchcraft scroll. As for the instant wand, compared to the witchcraft scroll, although it cannot seal some extremely powerful witchcraft, the wand can conduct magic fast enough to achieve instant effect. However, the amount of wood required to create a quickening wand is greater than that of a witchcraft scroll. Moreover, the knowledge of seal science required to make an instant wand is much more advanced than making a witchcraft scroll. Therefore, instant wands are generally rarer and more expensive than wizardry scrolls. Generally speaking, individual wizards will buy instant wands for their own use. In some large-scale wizard wars, wizard armies usually use witchcraft scrolls. With the cooperation of their comrades, they had enough time to chant. Moreover, in war, witchcraft is thrown out one after another with extremely high frequency. If all wizards used instant wands, they wouldn't be able to withstand such consumption. Similar to witchcraft scrolls and instant wands, in the world of immortality, the only thing that can match them is the talisman. However, the cost of making talismans is much lower than that of witchcraft scrolls and instant wands. Through the structure and spell of the talisman, even a piece of parchment can carry the power of the talisman. Moreover, its power is no worse than these 2 witchcraft items. After Ronan's thoughts whirled for a while, he put away his wand and then took out the medicine bottle from his storage bracelet. He checked the vials, but there was nothing new. It's nothing more than some potions for treating wounds, restoring magic power, restoring mental strength, and aiding meditation. They are all standard equipment for wizards. Ronan took back the potion and stuffed the storage bracelet into the pocket of his shirt. Then, he asked Triss about other things he knew about himself and his family. He thought to himself when he learned that the Fleming family had hired an official wizard to reproduce his evil-proof charm. Talisman seals and magic patterns are symbols that leverage the power of heaven and earth. However, the steps and details of drawing these 2 things are quite different. Relatively speaking, the strokes of talisman seals are simpler than those of magic patterns. However, drawing talismans requires careful attention in terms of laying out paper, grinding ink, and moving the brush. The complexity of the procedures and the tediousness of the methods are not comparable to magic patterns. Even with Ronan's attainments in drawing talismans, when he first started to draw a talisman, he had to follow the rituals of bathing, meditation, chanting, etc. Only after he became proficient in drawing a talisman can he skip some steps. But before drawing a talisman, he still had to breathe and calm his mind, and when drawing a talisman, he still had to chant the mantra in his heart. Moreover, when drawing a talisman, every stroke, how to turn, and how to control the time ratio are very particular. Simply copying the talisman will not produce any effect. The talisman in the talisman book is a copied talisman, which can only show the appearance of the talisman to the practitioner, but it cannot be used at all. The magic pattern is much more complicated than the talisman in terms of the pattern alone. However, as long as you figure out how to draw the pattern of the magic pattern, such as the ratio between the patterns and other data, you can completely replicate the magic pattern. The wizards in the wizard world have formed a fixed mindset, believing that the symbols that comprise the power of heaven and earth are all contained in their structure. Therefore, Ronan felt that the formal wizard who tried to copy his talisman would probably not think of the control of the time of drawing the talisman, as well as the rituals of drawing talismans such as bathing, meditation, and chanting. If there really were high-level formal wizards to study his evil-repelling talisman, he estimated that it would probably take a long time to study all the tricks in it. What's more, his evil-repelling talisman is only a first-level talisman in the world of cultivating immortals, not a high-end product. In the wizard world, there are also other witchcraft and magic tools that restrain undead creatures. Moreover, some powerful witchcraft can also eliminate undead creatures. For high-level formal wizards, time is precious, and no one will really spend time to study this talisman. In addition, Ronan asked Triss about other things about the Fleming family. But Triss didn't have a high status in the family and didn't know much. "You will let me go, right?" Triss said when Ronan had no other questions. Then, he looked at Ronan's expression and saw that he didn't have the slightest intention of letting him go, so he panicked again. "I won't tell anyone about what happened today. Or, give me an amnesia potion to erase my memory." Ronan's eyes lit up when he heard it. "Can you get an amnesia potion, or the formula for an amnesia potion?" Ronan had heard of the amnesia potion before, which was a very advanced potion. If he got this potion, it might be of great use to him in the future. However, when he asked this question, Triss was speechless. Ronan knew that Triss, a wizard apprentice, couldn't get potions or potion formulas. So, he stopped talking and planned to imprison Triss as his second experimental subject. Immediately, Ronan condensed a wizard's hand and hit Triss on the back of his head. Then, Ronan began to plan the place to imprison the experimental subjects. He wanted to build a basement under this mansion. But building a basement is different from digging a cellar. The basement has higher requirements in terms of load bearing. However, he also learned about architecture in the library of the Kingdom Wizard Academy. And he learned the witchcraft of reinforcing ceilings and walls. With the melting earth technique, steel bars and wood can be integrated into the walls, so that a decent basement can be built. Ronan thought of this and started to act immediately. 10 days passed before he knew it. Ronan finally opened a basement under the mansion. Currently, there are 5 prisons in the basement. If there are more experimental subjects in the future, he can open more prisons. One of the prisons imprisoned his number 1 experimental subject, Orisha, a cultist of the necromancer. The other prison was where his number 2 experimental subject, Triss of the Fleming family, was imprisoned. The two of them formed a control group because of their different meditation methods. During these 10 days, Ronan also studied the soundproof magic pattern recorded in the library. Carved it on the magic ore and integrated it into the wall of the basement. In this way, Orisha and Triss could not communicate in the basement. Ronan bought shackles, integrated them into the wall, and locked Triss up. Triss saw that he was locked up, struggled for a while, and couldn't break free, so he trembled. He never thought that the family's intelligence would be so outrageous. This Ronan Lawrence is not only not weak, but also a black wizard. Thinking that his body would be subjected to inhumane experiments, he felt desperate. "Lord Lawrence, please, don't use me for experiments. I can give you anything. I can act as your spy," Triss said to Ronan with tears streaming down his face. Ronan ignored him, opened the iron cell door, closed it, and left. Ronan came to a forest outside the town and tried 2 kinds of witchcraft, initial wind control, and initial thunderstorm. He first performed initial wind control. He chanted the spell, and uttered it from his mouth with a few obscure syllables. The ancient wood longevity magic power in Dantian was used by him and transformed into the magic power of initial wind control. In the wizard world, wizards use their own magic power to pry energy particles and then transform them into the magic power of witchcraft. Of course, wizards can also rely on their own magic power to transform into the magic power of witchcraft. However, casting witchcraft in this way will consume a lot of magic power. The wizard world has dense energy particles, and wizards are also used to inducing energy particles to fight. But the spiritual energy in the world of cultivation is not as dense as that in the wizard world. Therefore, the cultivators are used to casting spells with their own magic power. In the secular world, this concentration of spiritual energy cannot be borrowed. Therefore, Ronan almost completely used his own magic power to perform the initial wind control magic. As soon as the initial wind control was performed, he felt the power of the wind element surrounding him, and he could drive it with just his mental movement. Immediately, he used his mind to control the power of the wind element. Suddenly, the wind blew from under his feet and lifted him up. Ronan chanted while increasing the output of his magic power. The whole person slowly floated up. It stopped at about 2 meters. Ronan manipulated the power of the wind element to propel himself to fly at a low altitude. After flying for a while, he felt that flying with the power of the wind element, although it was easier to control, was not as smooth as flying with the anti-geomagnetic force of the magnetic field magic. Ronan kept chanting in his mouth, and when he stretched out his hand, an invisible sharp wind blade formed in the air. He pressed his hand into the void, and the wind blade shot forward. Swish! The tree trunk was cut by the wind blade, wood chips flew, and a large cut appeared immediately. Because initial wind control was still in the introductory stage, the power was not strong, so the wind blade was not powerful enough to cut the whole tree. Then, Ronan manipulated his mental power, controlled the power of the wind element, and collided left and right. Suddenly, dust flew in front of him, and with gusts of wind, it sometimes went left and sometimes went right. Through Triss's notes, Ronan knew that if he practiced primary wind control to a deep level, he would be able to suddenly create a wind from the ground and blow up the enemy unexpectedly. After trying primary wind control, Ronan changed to the spell of primary thunderstorm and started to recite it. The spell of primary thunderstorm is also longer than primary wind control, and the pronunciation is more difficult and obscure. As each syllable is uttered, the mana in Ronan's dantian is slowly consumed. He stretched his hand forward and released the magic power of primary thunderstorm. Suddenly, a violent force slowly formed in the air. Ronan thought, the initial casting speed of primary thunderstorm is also slower than primary wind control. At the beginning, it can only play a role in team combat. If the combat partner helps to hold the enemy, you can also use primary thunderstorm to attack. If it is a one-on-one, the speed at which this attack is formed, the enemy has already released several attacks. After 5 seconds, the power that had been brewing in the air finally exploded. Suddenly, there was a thunderbolt. A small, winding yellow lightning bolt suddenly struck down from the air. It struck a tree directly, and a spark immediately lit up on the tree. Then, the tree broke into 2 halves, falling to the left and right. After hitting the ground, dust rose all over the sky. Ronan looked through the dust at the 2 halves of the split tree trunk. He saw a spark on both sides of the cross-section, flashing red and burning. After trying 2 witchcrafts, Ronan returned to the town mansion. The 2 immortal trees in the wizard world can share his spiritual consciousness with him. Every moment, all the movements within a radius of more than 600 meters around the bungalow will be recorded in his mind. After he confirmed that there was no one around the bungalow, he moved his mind and disappeared in the mansion of the Shushan world. The next moment, he appeared in the bungalow of the wizard world. Southeast Province, Redwood Territory. Baron Layden Lawrence of Redwood Territory was entertaining Bob Fleming, a tribe member sent by Yusuf Fleming. The 2 sat at the dining table and talked. Next to Layden Lawrence was Ronan's younger brother, Bran Lawrence. Layden is 43 years old this year, with a big frame and a height of more than 1.9 meters. Just looking at his physique, he exudes a sense of oppression. He has black hair and black pupils, thick eyebrows and big eyes. He looks a little honest when he smiles, but quite majestic when he doesn't smile. Although his beard had just been shaved, there were still dense black roots on his face and chin. Bran was 14 years old this year, but he was already over 1.8 meters tall. His face was still full of childishness. His eyes were very clear, and he just sat quietly by the side, listening to his father talking with the Fleming family. Now, his eldest and second brothers were not at home, so he had to be the only one to accompany the younger generation. Bob was also in his 40s, slightly fat, with a thick brown beard, and was a third-level wizard apprentice. Layden poured Bob a glass of deep purple fragrant wine. "I don't know why you came to the Redwood Territory, but what does the Earl have to say?" Bob had kept his hands in the sleeves of his wizard robe and did not touch the sumptuous dishes on the table. At this time, he smelled the mellow aroma of the wine, so he reached out from the wizard robe, picked up the wine glass, gulped twice, and drank the wine in the glass. Layden then picked up the copper wine pot and continued to pour wine into Bob's wine glass. Bob glanced at Layden, took out a few bags and a letter from the storage magic device, and placed them on the table. As you know, during this period, the Undead Society has been causing chaos in various parts of the kingdom. Even in our southeastern province, traces of the Undead Society have been found. For the safety of the province, the Earl sent people to check the letters in the province. Coincidentally, I saw these letters, which were sent to you by your second son. When Bran heard that they were sent by Ronan, his eyes immediately flashed, and he wanted to reach out and take the letters to check. But seeing that there were outsiders here, he forcibly held back. Bob continued. Sir Layden, I'm sorry, we read the letters from your second son and found that your second son was in Triumph City and sent you magic stones that can restrain undead creatures. After hearing this, Layden and Bran couldn't help but look at the bags one by one, with surprise in their eyes. Bob picked up a bag, shook it, and poured out several magic stones the size of pigeon eggs. He picked up one of them with his thumb and index finger and showed it to Layden. Sir Layden, I want to tell you some wizard knowledge. Look at the fine lines on this stone. We wizards call it magic lines. Carving magic lines on the magic stone can generate magic power. And this magic line, according to your son's letter, can restrain necromancy and undead creatures. As I said just now, the undead will be very rampant in recent days. The Earl wants you to write a letter to your son Ronan and ask him to write a letter about the method of carving magic patterns or the way to get magic stones and send it to me. Quote. After listening to him, Layden thought for a while and said, Sir Bob, my son is studying at the Kingdom Wizard Academy. This method of carving magic patterns should be learned from the Kingdom Wizard Academy. If the Academy disagrees, this method should not be passed on to others. Hearing this, Bob wanted to say that your son lied to you and did not study at the Kingdom Wizard Academy at all. However, if he said it, it would mean that their family was secretly investigating Layden's son. First, he was afraid that Layden would guess that the Fleming family was investigating their son because they were estimating the strength of various families in the province in order to rebel. Second, he was afraid that Layden would become rebellious and would not cooperate with them. Of course, he was not afraid of Layden's rebelliousness. After all, as long as their family sent a formal wizard, they could kill all the people in this family, such a middle-class noble. But he still wanted to see which of the two situations, negotiation and coercion, Layden would cooperate best. If Layden didn't cooperate well with the soft approach, he would immediately use the hard approach. Bob smiled and said, Sir Layden, our Earl, is familiar with many formal wizards in the Kingdom Wizard Academy. He knows that there is no such magic pattern in the Academy. So, we want you to write a letter to ask your son where he got this magic pattern. Or how it was carved. Okay, Sir Bob. Layden agreed immediately after hearing it. He asked the servant to bring a quill pen, ink and parchment, and wrote a letter just before Bob. Bob looked at Layden's wording and couldn't help frowning slightly. The wording in the letter did not have the momentum of the head of the family at all, and it was basically all in the tone of negotiation. When this letter was sent, the noble son would most likely not take it seriously. No wonder Layden's son dared to deceive him, and took the family funds to eat, drink and have fun in Triumph City. Single quote. Bob couldn't help but mutter in his heart. He thought for a while, and said to Layden, Sir Layden, now the dead will be rampant, and the Earl really needs this magic pattern to restrain the dead witchcraft. I suggest you make it clear in the letter. Okay, Layden responded, and then added some statements in the letter according to Bob's words. After writing, he called a servant and told him to send the letter. However, he was stopped by Bob. Sir Layden, the Fleming family has a carrier pigeon transformed by witchcraft, which flies very fast. We can help you send the letter. Thank you. Layden handed the envelope to Bob. After Bob took it, he put it in the storage magic device, exchanged a few words with Layden, and after drinking a few glasses of wine, he left. After Layden sent a distance, he came back. When Bran saw Layden, he said, Father, I heard that the kingdom has a ban on the spread of wizard knowledge. If Brother Ronan tells the knowledge of magic patterns, will it be? Layden smiled. Among the 3 brothers, he is the most stubborn and the one who least listens to me. At the beginning, I advised him not to approach the wandering wizard who passed through the territory, but I never thought that he not only approached the wizard, but also bought a meditation method and practiced it secretly, and he almost died as a result. Later, he said he wanted to go to the Kingdom Wizard Academy. I said that he should go to the Wizard Academy in the neighboring province first, test his talent first, and then go to Triumph City. As a result, he still followed the caravan to Triumph City. What's more, your brother has been in Triumph City for nearly a year, and he is still alive and well, and he will judge everything. Sometimes, it's useless for us to worry about nothing. Ronan entered into the practice again day after day. Several days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Ronan sat cross-legged under the mother tree of his natal longevity tree. The light of the holy tree, which was light golden in color, spread on Ronan's body. Ronan felt that his greenwood spirit body had become much more active. The spiritual energy of the heaven and earth nearby flowed through his pores, through his skin, and into his meridians like water. He used the ancient wood longevity skill, and after guiding the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to walk through his meridians, it went to the Dantian and turned into the ancient wood longevity magic power. In the Dantian, a group of green mist-like magic power was rotating. This mist-like magic power became more and more dense, and there was a tendency to transform into liquid. Ronan pinched the seal with both hands, placed them on his legs, and his 5 hearts were facing the sky. His eyes were closed, and white air was exhaled from his mouth and nose from time to time. After a while, Ronan felt that there was a force brewing in his Dantian. Soon, the mist-like mana in his Dantian suddenly grew. This group of mana became much larger, and the green mist became more dense. Breakthrough. Single quote. Ronan called up Hongmeng and called up the value. Lifespan. 330 up pointing arrow. Strength. 44 up pointing arrow. Spirit. 53 up pointing arrow. Mana. 42 up pointing arrow. Skills. Ancient Wood Longevity Skill, 16th level 32% up pointing arrow. Qingmu Sword Skill, 8th level 97%. Yanshan Skill, 85% proficient. Qinglian White Lotus Skill, 10th level 22%. Cultivation Realm, 10th level of Qi Refining. Wizard Level, Level 3 Wizard Apprentice. Seeing that Qingmu Sword Skill would soon break through to the 9th level, Ronan decided to practice it. Because at the 9th level, he could perform a new sword move, Sword Shield for protection. In this way, his defense could be improved to a higher level. Immediately, Ronan followed the route of the Qingmu sword art and circulated his qi through his meridians over and over again. At the same time, the 2 Qingling swords in his Dantian began to hum. After he circulated his qi through his meridians, he went to his Dantian, washed through the 2 swords, and then went out of his Dantian. Every time he circulated his qi, Ronan felt that his connection with the 2 Qingling swords was getting deeper and deeper. Qingmu Sword Art, 8th level 98% up pointing arrow. Qingmu Sword Art, 8th level 99% up pointing arrow. The progress of practicing Qingmu Sword Art was gradually increasing. Suddenly, Ronan opened his eyes. A trace of sword light flashed in his pupils. Qingmu Sword Art, 9th level 1% up pointing arrow. At this time, he felt that his connection with the 2 Qingling swords had deepened a lot. And the perception of sword and shield for protection appeared in his mind at this time. Try the sword moves. Single quote. Ronan thought, and then he put away the holy tree light of his natal longevity tree. Then, he had an idea and traveled to the mansion of Wei Guo in the world of cultivation. Since he came to the mansion, he went to the town, bought some food, and gave it to the 2 experimental subjects. Then, he left the town, and seeing that there was no one around, he injected the ancient wood longevity magic power into the witchcraft model of magnetic torrent. Suddenly, a magnetic force rushed through his body. Under his control, a force of anti-geomagnetic field was generated in his body. His whole body shot into the sky like an arrow. After reaching an altitude of about 30 meters, he stopped and looked around. After seeing a forest that he had never been to before, he had an idea and flew towards the forest. His clothes rustled through the air. Not long after, he flew above the forest. Then, with an idea, the magnetic force on his body suddenly attracted the geomagnetic force. The whole person suddenly fell down rapidly. When he was about to reach the ground, he immediately released an anti-geomagnetic force and stopped just a finger away from the ground. Then, he had an idea and landed steadily on the ground. Ronan pinched the sword formula, and 2 green sword lights appeared in front of him. The sword lights disappeared, revealing 2 Qingling swords. The Qingling sword was originally green like bamboo. However, Ronan carved magic patterns on it and integrated magic conducting metal. Therefore, when the sword lights disappeared, the Qingling swords looked like 2 ancient, heavy, and faintly shiny bronze swords. Ronan secretly performed the sword formula. Suddenly, the 2 swords hummed. Sword lights emerged on them, and the sword energy burst out. The tree trunk was destroyed by the sword energy, and sword marks appeared one after another. Ronan pinched the sword formula again and performed the sword shadow splitting. The 2 Qingling swords with shining sword lights suddenly split into 3. 6 Qingling swords appeared in front of him. Then, Ronan changed his sword tactics again and used the newly mastered sword move, Sword Shield, for protection. Suddenly, the 6 Qingling swords released a light green force, and each sword faintly formed a sword shield. Under Ronan's control, the 6 swords circled vertically around Ronan's body, forming a green light curtain. Ronan's consciousness sensed that a blocking force was generated as the 6 swords rotated. If there were attacks from spells or witchcraft, they would be blocked by this force. Ronan used magnetic torrent to float up. When he was more than 3 meters in the air, he controlled the 6 swords to swim around his body. Suddenly, the 6 swords flew around Ronan like 6 fast-swimming fish. Moreover, the 6 swords did not interfere with each other, and faintly formed a spherical shell, wrapping the whole body. This is the real protective sword and shield, Ronan thought. At this time, he felt that he still had too few Qingling swords. If there were enough swords, and they swam together, his defense would be more airtight. Ronan flew towards a tree. At the same time, he cast the protective sword and shield. The 6 swords moved around his body in a circle. The sword and shield formed by the 6 swords just touched the tree in front. Suddenly, the sword and shield immediately burst out with a sword energy, which immediately crushed the tree into sawdust. Ronan continued to fly towards a mountain. After the sword and shield touched the mountain, the sword energy immediately burst out. The mountain wall was driven by the sword energy, and dust splashed from the mountain wall. As Ronan went deeper, the protective sword and shield opened up a corridor in the mountain. Moreover, the sword energy also blocked all the flying debris and dust. It seems that this sword shield not only has the effect of protecting the body, but also has the effect of attacking. Single quote. Ronan thought, and his heart moved, and the magnetic field force on his body suddenly increased. The whole person flew out of the corridor. Then, he waved his hand. The 6 flying swords that were originally moving around his body and drawing circles immediately flew up. They turned into 6 green rays and were collected in his sleeves. After the 6 green rays entered his meridians, they merged into 2 green rays and entered his dantian. After the green rays were suspended vertically in the dantian, the light disappeared, revealing the original appearance of the Qingling sword. The mist-like ancient wood longevity magic power submerged the Qingling sword and nourished it. It was getting close to evening, and a ray of setting sun was about to set in the sky. Triumph City gradually became dark, and every household lit candles. In the Wild Deer Bar in the middle of the city, candlesticks were placed on the wall. Each candlestick had more than 10 white candles. The candles were burning, and the wax dripped all over the candlesticks. The Wild Deer Bar was as bright as day. The firelight reflected on the faces of some drunkards, making their already red faces even redder. Ronan and Paul sat at a bar, drinking honey wine. By the way, they solved dinner. This time, Paul asked Ronan out. He said that the matter that Ronan asked him to do had been settled. It was a wizard apprentice from the Kingdom Wizard Academy who was willing to sell a second-level inferior growth potion formula. Ronan asked the price, and the price was acceptable, but Paul said that the wizard apprentice had a condition. She wants you to tell her the trick of refining anti-aging agent. Paul said. Have you told her my identity? Ronan asked without thinking about the condition. Of course not, Paul said. Ronan nodded and said, but I have no tricks in making anti-aging agents. It's all based on talent. There must be a way to increase the success rate, right? Paul asked. Ronan shook his head. He made it completely according to the formula. His success rate was high because he had extremely precise temperature and time control ability. This ability, except for him and some alchemy wizards, only high-level formal wizards have it. Does she have any other conditions? Ronan asked again. I don't know. Paul shook his head. I'll ask her tomorrow. The next day, Ronan and Paul met again at the Wild Deer Bar. How is it? Ronan asked the first sentence when he came up. Paul said, she has a condition, which is to see you make an anti-aging agent with her own eyes. After hearing this, an idea came to Ronan's mind. So, he said, okay, but we can't meet. I can only use the magic stone to record my refining process. She will pay for the magic stone. I'll ask her tomorrow. After Paul answered, he called the bartender and ordered honey wine and sumptuous dishes. Then, he tilted his head and said to Ronan, I have been working hard for you these days. This meal is still yours. ... Another day later, Ronan and Paul met again at the Wild Deer Bar. Paul gave him a positive answer. The wizard apprentice agreed to this proposal. I'm going to the Lanny Vault. Paul took out a voucher from the storage magic device. Take out the gold coins she gave me to buy the magic stone. Ronan glanced at the voucher and saw a family emblem and a string of signatures on it. Afterwards, Ronan and Paul went to the Lanny Vault and bought a magic stone in a wizard shop. The Shadow Magic Stone is a magic stone made by engraving the shadow magic pattern on the mirror stone. After Paul bought the Shadow Magic Stone, Ronan took it and looked at it carefully. Soon, he recorded all the shadow magic pattern on it. Then, he and Paul found a hotel in the lower city and booked a room. He drank a bottle of primary transformation potion and turned into a woman with a curvy figure. Now, his primary transformation potion has reached the master level. After drinking it, it is not difficult to make a big change in his body with the help of spirit. It is just that turning into a woman requires a lot of magic power, and only one potion can be effective for about half an hour. However, he only refined one anti-aging agent, and half an hour was enough. After turning into a woman, Ronan covered himself tightly with a cloak and a mask. In this way, he was sure that even his father would not recognize him after seeing the image in the Shadow Magic Stone. When Paul saw that Ronan could actually transform into a woman, his eyes lit up and he hurriedly said, Ronan, your primary transformation potion has actually reached this level. Can you give me a few copies? Help me get the second level growth promoting potion, and I'll give it to you. Ronan promised. He didn't actually want to give it to Paul, but he was afraid that Paul would do evil after using the primary transformation potion to transform into a woman. After all, the primary transformation potion is not made by adding other people's things, and after drinking it, it can only change the appearance. Although Paul changed into the appearance of a woman, his breath and energy fluctuations did not change, which made it easy for people to find out. Especially for Paul, a wizard apprentice who practices fire elemental witchcraft. His energy fluctuations are stronger than those of wizard apprentices of the same level, which makes it easier for people to find out. If Paul is found out, he will be implicated. Okay. Paul walked aside, picked up the magic stone for taking pictures, and was ready to take pictures at any time. Ronan took out the tools for refining medicine from the storage magic tools and placed them on the table in the room. Then, he asked Paul to start taking photos. Paul nodded and injected magic power into the photo mode. Suddenly, an image of Ronan appeared in the center of the photo magic stone. Ronan, who had a curvy figure and was covered tightly, began to refine the anti-aging agent. About 20 minutes later, Ronan refined an anti-aging agent. Seeing Ronan pouring the anti-aging agent into the medicine bottle and plugging it with the cork, Paul controlled his magic power and rotated the shadow magic stone until the image of Ronan refining the medicine was completely solidified in the magic stone. Outside the magic stone, Ronan's image can be seen, playing in a loop in the core of the magic stone. As long as you put the magic power into it, you can control the forward and backward effects. I will definitely keep the image stone and hand over the image. Paul made a promise and then said, I wonder if you can reward me with the primary transformation potion that has the same effect just now. At this time, the effects of the medicine on Ronan were gradually dissipating. His height gradually grew taller, and the bulges at the front and back gradually shrank. While his body recovered, he said, "I only got one bottle of this kind of primary transformation potion with this effect, and it was the bottle just now, and I drank it. But as long as my condition is good enough, I will definitely be able to refine another bottle in the future. Once I refine it, I will give it to you immediately. You must keep your word." When Paul heard what Ronan said, he was half disappointed and half excited. On the second day, Paul finally lived up to Ronan's expectations and brought over the second-level low-grade growth-promoting potion formula. Ronan took the formula back to the bungalow and looked at it carefully. This second-level low-grade growth-promoting potion formula is called Wood Spirit Water. I heard from Paul that this formula is the formula of the elves. This formula should have been snatched away when the wizard was driving away the elves, or when he was conquering the elves. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.